Hello everyone. You're on the Anijin channel. I'm with you, Anijin. Today is a new interesting alternative story, Ayla Berserker Kanohi. Subscribe to my channel and like all episodes at once. Well, I wish you a pleasant viewing. October 10th. This date is very important for Konoha because on this day the residents celebrate the victory over Kyubi. But it is also considered a day of mourning and memory of those who died in that terrible incident. Especially this day causes mixed feelings among the Hokage family, because they were born on this day. Here the older children of the Namikaze clan are burdened with such a joyful day with memories. That KESHINA gave his life to their firstborn children for the sake of defeating the fox. No matter how hard it is for parents from the loss of their son, they continue to smile to please their children. Especially on their birthday. At the same time, one scarlet-haired boy with sky-blue eyes and very remarkable scars resembling a fox's mustache was sitting on the windowsill. He did not take his eyes off the colorful fireworks that were being launched at the festival and wished for only one better life for himself and his sister. He was always on the choke, but so fascinated by the multicolored flashes. He didn't even notice how a girl who looked like she was 3-4 years old approached him and pulled his order. The edge of an already pretty old t-shirt. Startled, the scarlet-haired man turned around sharply and exhaled with relief. It was his sister, a beautiful woman with pale skin and long, black hair like the darkness itself. She was wearing a shabby blue dress, which is in no way inferior in quality to the brother's attire. Nizan, what are those sounds? Her gaze was directed towards the noise, but she was not destined to see such a beautiful sight. Because these cloudy gray eyes are proof of blindness, girls. It's the fireworks, without hesitation, he replied, but I saw a puzzled face his sister. The guy thought about it, trying to find the words to explain. Well, these are such colorful, bright flashes. Sometimes they form into some fancy patterns or images. The girl's face lit up with joy, even though she was blind from birth, but in her head. She tried to build a kind of picture described by her brother. And what are they for? Again, the interlocutor was puzzled by the question, jumping on the spot. Only the elder did not share this joy. His face darkened, and a curse was circling in his thoughts towards the inhabitants of this village. But he was able to restrain his anger and calmly replied, "Today, October 10th, they celebrate the victory over the nine-tailed. That is over me." The tin-haired man muttered the second part of the whisper, clenching his fists to white, and looked down at the abandoned playground. The girl was overcome with sadness. She knows perfectly well what his brother is going through. And she is ashamed that she can't help him in any way. It's your birthday today. She decided to change the subject, hoping that he would cheer up. She grabbed his hand and began jumping on the spot, hoping to shake the scarlet-haired one, and what's there to hide? The brunette was really glad, remembering that her brother had such an important date today. Yes, you're right, the boy smiled, ruffling the hair on his sister's head. Just be quiet, and then the house will not sustain your energy. Jumping down from the windowsill, he put his hand on her shoulder. Do you want to eat? In response, he received a nod from the girl. The Black Fury ran to the table and, forgetting about its size, slightly bumped into it with her shoulder. Are you hurt? The scarlet-haired man asked, removing the splits of the teapot, which was already covered with rust in some places, but still faithfully served its owners. The brunette only proudly grunted at the question, lifting her nose, which made her brother laugh while he poured boiling water over the ramen. Ramen again, she muttered, sitting down at the table and dissatisfied poking noodles with chopsticks. I'm sorry, tomorrow something tastier find, promised Lavology. Although since I have a holiday, this is my gift, so don't be indignant, the guy smiled, stirring the noodles. The girl only frowned at this answer, but almost immediately changed to a happy face when an idea came to her head. Then maybe we should go to Grandpa Tachi and Sister Ayama. No, he answered right away. Anger seized him, but he took a deep breath. He calmly replied, I'm sorry, but it's more dangerous outside today than usual. I'm worried about your safety. Can I help you with the food? Alavalasi suggested, thereby changing the subject to get rid of unnecessary thoughts. I'm doing fine on my own, she said proudly. Your training in sensory analysis were not in vain. This is wonderful, the guy smiled sadly, watching his sister eat. He almost didn't eat anything himself, the noodles seemed to get stuck across his throat. And I had to swallow it through my strength. The reason for the bad mood was not only today's date, but also the sister, who is becoming more and more independent. She is his ray, which allows you to stay in this world, but someday she will find friends, a guy and leave. Is something wrong? The brunette asked anxiously, perfectly feeling her brother's emotions. No, I just want to sleep. Pretending to yawn, Alavalasi lied, wiping away a tear. She didn't say another word, spending the entire dinner in her thoughts. It's time to sleep. The sleeping place consisted of an old mattress, with somehow worn spots, and a torn piece of fabric that replaced them with a blanket. Covering the girl, the boy lay down next to her and hugged her to provide extra warmth for her. The scarlet-haired man lay with his eyes open and, listening to his sister's breathing, thought about where to get food. Several hours passed. After making sure that the little angel was asleep, he adjusted the blanket and went to the window. Leaning his hands on the railing, the boy closed his eyes, pronounced, all mentally. Kurama is all clear. On the other side of his consciousness, in the depths of the seal, in a clearing dotted with flowers, a red fox was proudly reclining, watching the landscape. The only pleasure was spoiled by the golden bars surrounding him. You were right, your guards sat for a couple of hours and left, Biju said, looking up, putting his muzzle on his paws. I told you that these professionals would be too lazy to follow someone who has every day like the previous one. The scarlet-haired man grinned with satisfaction, jumping over the railing. And it's disgusting for them to watch a demon anyway, the boy added, throwing his hands behind his head. Walking along the dusty road of a sleeping village. And which landfill is next in line today? I decided to change the subject of foxes, which is sick for the boy. 43 Polygon. This will be the third visit this year, the scarlet-haired man reluctantly replied, carefully moving through the small streets in the direction of the named place. According to the boy, it was the oldest landfill, because the fence has long been rusted, and the whole territory has long been overgrown with tall grass. But with all this, he managed to find kunai and shurikens every time. However, their quality is better just to remain silent. Is there someone training here? He was surprised, picking up a kun near the target, where he certainly collected it last time. There are enough singles who love silence and privacy. So there's nothing surprising here, Kyubi explained, as his vessel went further and further into the forest until he fell. Shaking off the dust, he looked back and exhaled with relief when he saw a valve sticking out of the ground. So he's not such a loser to fall out of the blue. Maybe there is something valuable there. Curiosity took over, and without consulting Biju, he tried to move the valve from the dead point. With great persuasion, he succumbed, not without a little help from the fox. Lifting the creaking hatch, stale air escaped from below, forcing the scarlet-haired man to recoil, trying to clear his throat. I can say with confidence that no one has been there for a long time. Closing the nose-collar t-shirt, he suggested, again looking inside, downstairs, as if on command. Torches lit up in the room, giving a glimpse of just an empty hall. It's too small to be a bunker for residents. Kurama, can you scan it? The boy asked, then feeling the burning chakra pulse emanating from him. There are spots on the wall to your left. Row on the left, fourth from the bottom. After listening to his roommate, he pressed a brick, and the wall immediately began to move apart in different directions, like a shoji. The space had become 3 times larger, and now there was a small library with a desk and a laboratory that took up a little more places. Thank you, friend. Well, let's see what interesting things were left here. Even though I don't feel any traps, be careful anyway. All right, the scarlet-haired man nodded, studying the contents of the shelf. Anatomy, psychology, biology of animals. It's all interesting, and will have to be read, but it's not a real treasure. Sitting down on a chair, he began to study the table carefully. Opening the bottom right drawer, he found the button that activated the lever on the opposite side of the table. Pulling it out from under the table, a piece of paper fell out. Between heaven and earth, I stretched the nets to dry in the south wind. The boy read aloud and immediately returned to the shelf, taking a flower about arthropods. After finding the chapter on spiders and studying it carefully, he found nothing. No clue, no clue. Was it just a verse, or did you really think that they would give you a hint? Not without mockery, the fox finally gave voice. And then where to look? The scarlet-haired man tried to hide his irritation behind a sigh, but QB felt emotions perfectly. And he grinned contentedly. Come to the table and put your hand on the table, and then I'll figure it out myself. Following the fox's instructions, he saw a warm, scarlet chakra coming out of his hand, which began to change color first to dark blue, then blue, until eventually, with a disgusting feeling of cold. And after that, a new section opened in the table with 3 scrolls inside. Does the owner of this place have such a disgusting chakra? Grinning nervously, the boy asked, disgustedly brushing off his hand. Get rid of this feeling. About all the same, the seal is imperfect, otherwise I would have had to pick up the imprint of the chakra for a long time. But you know who you will have to be wary of. Wanting to distract himself, he opened the first flower, running his eyes over the text until his gaze caught on. For one technique. The call for the resurrection of the wicked world. The guy's eyes lit up with joy, but with each line the light in his eyes was replaced by disappointment. I don't care about the victims, but the question is, where can I find their DNA? I don't even know their names, and maybe there aren't any graves, he mused aloud, rocking on his chair and staring at the ceiling. The only chance that could have brought his family and his sister's parents back to life has just disappeared before our eyes. Although an unpleasant bitterness settled in his chest, he was not going to give up. Continuing to study the scrolls. Dawn is coming soon, it's time to go home. The fox warned the guy sitting on the floor and holding his head. He looked at all the scrolls that could contain at least some clue. But there was nothing. Not a word, not even a nod. Like a rag doll, he somehow got up and trudged towards the house, interrupting communication with QB. Wanting to be alone with his thoughts. When he returned, his sister still peacefully sopella, seeing is not the first dream. He couldn't help but smile, leaning forward with scarlet hair, removed a lock of hair from her face and kissed her forehead. Tired both emotionally and physically, he lay down on the floor, taking his sister's hand. It was finally possible to get some sleep before the next hard day. For many, darkness is fear, where anything can hide. Anyone, including the so-called demon, who was holding his sister's hand, was slowly moving towards such a favorite restaurant. Scav from an inconspicuous street. At the very entrance, the smell of a mixture of spices with a rich broth hit them in the nose, from which involuntarily drooled. Swallowing, the scarlet-haired man chose seats at the left edge of the counter, casting a nervous glance back. Hoping that no one would enter here. I was already starting to worry that you wouldn't come. A young girl with long brown hair, with tied tails, smiled sweetly at the guests. How are you feeling, birthday girl? She asked, stroking the girl's hair. Fine, look, and I'm Mityan. Naruto gave me a hairpin. The brunette exclaimed enthusiastically, turning her head so that she could better see the jewelry. Sasuke, speak more respectfully. I'm sorry but Yamasan, that you had to stay late at work, the scarlet-haired man said, slightly bowing his head. Don't apologize, Naruto-kun. You know we'll be happy to stay to receive our best clients. Toiki said, coming out of the kitchen with 2 plates, and placing them in front of the children, leaned on the counter. And I'm more interested in where you got the gift from. Ayami asked, pulling the boy's ear. Where it was, it's gone, Naruto hissed, stretching out behind his ear. How rude you talk, brother. The brunette decided to make fun of her in time. And yet it's a shame that you come in so rarely. The old man sighed sadly, looking at the children who were like grandchildren to him. Too much risk, muttered Lovolos, folding her palms and saying after. Thanks for the poison. Bon appetit. Tariff brother, the girl immediately began to eat, while the boy studied the dish and stirred gently. The golden broth glistened slightly from the rays of the lamps, indicating how saturated it was. The smell of meat and green onions almost cramped his stomach, forcing him to pounce on food. But he ate slowly, as Toiki had taught him, trying to enjoy such rarely available food. Looking at him, the adults had one thought: an aristocrat. And not only the way of eating talked about it. Many would envy the boy's appearance. A slightly rounded face, but with fine features that will clearly become brighter expressions when he grows up. Emerald eyes with a slight shade of blue, and the most important pride is scarlet hair, soft and silky. And Yama always liked to comb his hair, she would like her to have the same. It was worth Sasuke to finish the strap-ons. How Iyami took the girl with her to the kitchen to try on a gift. And it was worth Toiki gathering his thoughts to ask the boy. But Naruto spoke first, as if feeling, I have thought a lot about your offer, but I have to refuse. It will be better for all of us. The main problem is that we will become more visible to everyone, and this threatens you with constant acts of vandalism. Our house is not a pity, and you can always move to another one. And you will face great financial difficulties. I think you tell every visitor that you have a demon. Chiuchi looked away. He was ashamed to admit it, but everything that the boy had just said was true. Especially it became disgusting in his soul when Naruto looks and speaks with such a cold and indifferent tone. He doesn't care about his life. Only his sister allows him to stay afloat, not drown in hatred. Don't blame yourself, Toiki-san. It's not your fault. Just take care of Sasuke if anything happens to me. Stop moping. Everything will be wonderful in your life, and we will help you in any way we can. So do not hesitate to contact them, show them what you really are, the old man smiled, patting the boy's hair. Although he needed these words more than Naruto. By this time, two inseparable girlfriends had returned, and the youngest of them was in a new dress. How do you like it? The brunette asked, twirling on the spot. As always, blue suits you very well, it looks like a real princess, the scarlet-haired man praised. Taking the package from his hands and bowing. How much do I owe? She waved away these words. A gift after all. I've put some more dresses and a couple of things in there for you. Thank you very much. Well, now the most important thing is the cake. Toiki said solemnly, placing a pastry with candles in front of the girl. Let's talk about 3, Ayami suggested, putting Sasuke on her lap. 1, 2, 3. Everyone screamed and applauded when the birthday girl blew out the candles. Happy birthday. And what did you wish for? Naruto asked, pouring tea. Can't you say otherwise? It won't come true, Toiki said anxiously, slicing the cake. Then I won't say for sure. Frowning, the brunette said, making everyone laugh. They could talk and laugh even until the morning, but Naruto could see that Sasuke was already rubbing his eyes, and look. He would soon start pecking. And the adults are clearly tired after a hard day's work, which will be repeated tomorrow. Therefore, after saying goodbye to the adults and politely refusing to spend the night under Sasuke's slight indignation, they went home. It was already late, and there were almost no people on the streets. In fact, there were only revelers left, who most of all pose a danger to the scarlet-haired one. It was because of this that the children's path was no different, trying to move unnoticed through dark, narrow alleys. But luck was not on their side today. I'm about halfway home, and that's it. At that moment, a group of 3 people began to surround them, blocking all escape routes. I'll distract them, and you run back to Toiki-san, the scarlet-haired man whispered, slowly retreating to the fence. But what about you? Sasuke asked in a trembling voice. She couldn't see, but she was perfectly aware of everything around her. The fear of her brother and the terrible phonetic desire to kill, firm which tears appeared in her, and a small tremor seized her body. I'll talk to them and get back to you right away. So don't worry. A lie. The brunette immediately understood. No matter how convincingly the brother spoke, he did not believe it himself. But there was no point in arguing, because she would only hinder him. Look, don't get confused. It's time to check how well you navigate with the help of the chakra pulse. Ready? The children ran in one direction. Only if the girl was to return to Ishiraku, then the scarlet-haired one attacked an adult. With a rusty kunai, which he always kept with him. Naruto swung with all his might, hoping to stick a kunai in the opponent's eye, but grabbed his hand. And no effort is enough to overcome an adult, only if. Kurama. The time has come. The scarlet-haired man exclaimed, hitting the adult in the stomach, causing the fight to weaken, and he was able to get out. There's enough of you for a couple, so I'll take control to make sure I keep up. At this time, Kyuubi warned, folding the seal of concentration, and then the scarlet threads of the chakra spread from the cage. Through the boy's chakra channels. Naruto felt the chakra burning his body pleasantly. The iris turned scarlet, and the pupils elongated. The teeth looked like fangs, claws instead of nails, and a barely noticeable orange steam emanated from the body. Well, shall we play? The fox asked, taking the kunai with a reverse grip. His voice was a mixture of his snarlet, which made everyone present shudder. The demon finally showed his face, the bravest one said, rushing at the Jinchuriki with a katana. Kurama easily dodged the attack and stuck a kunai in the thigh of the opponent, followed by the same striking to jump a foot in the jaw. And immediately there was a crunch, which made Kyuubi smile. We need more blood, baby. One of the attackers shouted, but before he could take a couple of steps, the fox threw a katana at him, piercing his chest. He's poking, raging waves. Shinobi shouted, directing a stream of water at Jinchuriki, but it just evaporated around him, allowing him to calmly run to the goal. The two survivors readied their weapons, intending to give battle to the smiling demon. A few seconds to approach and rock. After these words, the cover immediately disappeared, and Jinchuriki began to fall unconscious, but the shinobi did not stop. And one of them managed to keep a straight diagonal scar on the left eye of the boy, before he collapsed to the ground. And what's going on here? A man with long gray hair, a bushy mustache and beard asked. Approaching the boy, he tore the seal from his back and hid it in the sleeve of a black kimono. Emerald eyes ran over the recumbent body, but his attention was interested in the scarlet hair. And when he turned his gaze to Shinobi, they again felt animal fear, seeing in the eyes of their savior the desire to kill. Answer me quickly. Naruto felt like he was floating in the sky. He didn't want to open his eyes, hoping that this silence and calmness would last forever. Now there will be no fear, no hunger, no hatred, only silence and tranquility. But has he really forgotten about Sasuke? Is he ready to give his sister to the mob for the sake of his ego? No, Toiki-san and Ayami-san will take care of her. She'll be fine, and so will he. Then what is it that haunts his heart, forcing him to keep his consciousness afloat and not plunge into eternal darkness? Hope, love, hatred for others. The desire to kill all these vile creatures. No, this black spot on his soul is too weak to force him to live. So what is it? Wake up already, a voice was heard through the ringing emptiness. The scarlet-haired man opened his eyes, looking at the gray sky, through the golden lattice. Finally, it's already getting sick of your depressive emotional background. Look, it's going to rain. The fox was indignant, looking up and putting out his paw. It looks like it's drizzling already. Hey, why are you silent? Damn it! Naruto shouted at his subconscious, covering his face with his hands. Why? Why can't I just die? I want to open this cage and kill all these ungrateful bastards. So that not a stone remains of this village. I want to see my parents, look them in the eye and ask why. Why did they condemn me to such a fate? Ha ha ha, this hysterical laughter, full of pain and despair, tore the heart of Kurama, who was unable to help in this situation. The truth, which he so desires, will only make it more painful for him. The boy did not know how to throw out the accumulated feelings, and found nothing better than to pour his nails into his face, as if trying to tear it off. The fox sighed sadly and, wrapping his jinchuriki with his tail, snuggled up to himself, putting his muzzle next to him. Look, your life, like mine, is full of shit. We are just toys in the hands of those who think they are, who do not understand who. We cannot give up, and even more so bend under them. We need to pull ourselves together and wait for 6-7 years, then we will be able to put our plan into execution. Then we will be free, and no one will control our destinies. I'm sorry that I gave up. Wiping his tears, the scarlet-haired man grinned. Thank you for always being there and helping me. Ha, don't be a little guy. We're family, right? But the answer was only silence, as Naruto fell asleep. Apparently, the emotional outburst finally knocked all the remaining strength out of him. I will not let you harm my son again, the fox muttered, removing the hair from the boy's face with a claw. He remembered the sealing day perfectly, as if it was yesterday. Flashback, cold and emptiness. Once again he found himself locked up, even if there were no chains this time, but now there was a golden lattice, which made him sick. The bars look so thin, fragile, but as soon as you wake up to them, you immediately pull your paw away. Because with unbearable heat you are still being electrocuted. Freaks! The fox growled, twisting his face. I will get out and destroy Konoha first, about that I will break the ruins of your beloved Uzushio. But his monologue was interrupted by a nasty children's plan, because of which, do not understand, a strong wind blew firmware. And somewhere in the depths of darkness, irritation was heard. Scrat of thunder. What kind of no? Is it really possible for me to behave like this? Which Uzumaki turned out to be stupid. At the bottom, he saw his jinchuriki, anticipating freedom. His grin broke into a smile. The fox swung his paw, preparing to get rid of the fate of being connected with each other. It's better for you that way. But in a matter of centimeters, the paw froze, and the child, clutching the claw, stopped crying and laughed loudly. The wind with lightning immediately subsided, and it became warm, even cozy. You can tell why I stopped. Although, if he's lying here all the time, then I can get out at any moment. Then it's better to wait until everything calms down, and everyone should relax. Yes, that's a good idea. You fell asleep, aren't you afraid of me? The fox was thinking, putting his muzzle on his paw and watching the sleeping baby, who did not even think to let go of his claw. In the hospital reality, he woke up in the physical world, and this saddened the scarlet-haired one. I wanted to wake up in a clearing, where the sun was always shining bright and warm. The birds never stopped singing, and the wind carried cool air from the river. This is how an ideal world should look like, but instead I found myself in a stuffy ward with already hated white walls. And this damn smell of medicines. As luck would have it, the sun was mercilessly burning. Hoping to hide from it, he turned over on his side and met the blonde's gaze. Her hair was braided into braids. There was some kind of strange tattoo, in the form of a diamond on his forehead, and a big G, big eyes attracted attention. I thought you'd sleep longer. You are, after all. The woman stumbled, tapping her pen on the tablet, and meaningfully made a noise, looking at a piece of paper. I'm sorry, but you know that, right? That I'm a jinchuriki. Yes, it's hard not to understand in relation to me, the guy replied sarcastically, wincing and clutching his left eye. Where was he supposed to be? Yeah, it's a wonder the wound hasn't healed yet. The pain, I understand, is moderate. Chakra channels do not bother. Yet you almost burned them. Everything is fine, as long as the eye doesn't hurt. You'll have to be patient for a bit, you don't have such a case. A case to give painkillers. We won't torture you today, but tomorrow you will have to undergo a full examination and pass a couple of tests. So mentally prepare, tomorrow you have a busy day. Breakfast is at 8, lunch is at 2, and dinner is at 6. You'll eat here today, and then you'll have to walk to the dining room. You say so, I'm going to have to lie here for a long time, the tin-haired man grinned, turning to the other side. For about a week, I was ordered to carefully monitor your condition, so you will definitely stay here for a week, the doctor replied. Already getting ready to leave, but froze when the patient jumped out of bed. How much? Let's you let me go now. I need to take care of my sister. You're talking about Sasuke-chan, you don't have to worry. Good people are looking after her. She'll visit tomorrow. By the way, I do not advise you to try to run away. The Anbu are looking out for you. Waving the tablet goodbye, the blonde left the ward, leaving Naruto in proud solitude. Sighing, the scarlet-haired man fell back on the bed, crossing his arms behind his head. He's being treated too well. Was it because of the chakra that the fox was scared, or did he prove his fitness with this? In any case, he didn't want to bother his head with it now, and Kurama doesn't answer, it remains only to wait. Out of boredom, he looked around his room, lingering on the bedside table, where there was a fruit basket and a book. Taking it, he ran it over the image of the whirlpool symbols on the cover, feeling something familiar or even native in this sign. The history of the Uzumaki clan, muttered the name of the boy, and immediately opened the book. The birds gave their songs to the whole Kanoki, and, together with the warm rays of the sun, brought joy to the residents. Except for one scarlet-haired boy who in the morning, without having time to open his eyes, ran to take an analysis and undergo an examination at all possible doctors, having heard about some for the first time. Naruto, with a sigh of relief, opened the door to his room and, shuffling his feet to his bed, fell on it like a dead weight. He had been promised that it would all take no more than an hour, and now, looking up at his watch, he realized that he had squandered almost until lunch. They didn't let me go to breakfast, they felt everything, stabbed and enlightened me. I also had to endure all those hateful and contemptuous looks. Some grandmothers jumped away from him, as if from a leper, and began to pray to all possible gods. How I want to fuck everything up here. It flashed through the boy's mind. I would be happy to help you with this, but even if you let me out, then most likely I will be sealed in a blockhead worse than you. The fox chuckled in the cage, but abruptly quieted down until it switched to a guttural growl. The scarlet-haired man understood perfectly well that this sudden change of mood was not groundless, and pulled out a hidden scalpel from his sleeve, so successfully borrowed in one of the offices, grabbing the palm so that the weapon lay along the arm, leaving it unnoticed. Hokage-sama, you can't go there. Him. Shizune's muffled voice was heard through the closed door, which immediately swung open. Without disturbing Shizune, Tsunade said listlessly, leaning her shoulder against the wall and slowly sipping coffee. Thank you, Tsunade herself, smiling, thanked. He thanked Namikaze before closing the door behind him. The boy now looked like a wildcat trapped in a corner. Sitting on the bed, he tensed up, preparing for any turn of events. Yanshariki knew perfectly well who was in front of him, and what, he also understands well to whom. I came, and the incident in the alley further inflamed the situation. Hello, Naruto. From the smile, and the trace is gone, leaving just compressed lips that restrain Kage from unnecessary words. The gaze showed all contempt and disgust for the child sitting in front of him. And all the best to you, Hokage-sama. Seeing all the relationships, the scarlet-haired man answered with a mean face, although even without this, he had a score to settle with this blonde man, who did not help him and Sasuke in any way, but left him to the mercy of fate. But at the same time, the boy decided to bow his head slightly, without taking his eyes off from the newcomer. There was an awkward silence, like in a duel, where the opponents are waiting for each other's move. My heart skipped a beat when Seng kicked the door and, entering, leaned against the wall again, and Shizune slipped behind, holding a tablet in her hands and writing something down. Look, Minato, or else she'll bite off her fingers. The doctor decided to dilute the situation, as Mikaze thought. But in fact, the dentist complained about this problem today, when half of his fingers were almost cut off. After an unsuccessful joke, which seemed to the already irritated Jinchurika offensive. Don't worry, I'll just do a cursory inspection. We don't need to be enemies, right, Naruto? Minato pulled on a fake smile while wearing gloves. Yes, of course, he also tried to win back the Scarlet Hairs, but he clearly did it worse than the project. Villages. And how do you feel? Hokage asked more coldly, approaching the bed. In general, it's wonderful, apart from a full medical examination and night checks from the warden doctor. He replied at the same time with a squint, looking at the blonde, which also rewarded him with a displeased look. And don't pout at me, it's all your reputation as a master of escape that's to blame. I didn't have enough to run after you at night. This is all good, of course, but maybe you are tormented by voices in your head or obsessive thoughts. Or maybe nightmares. Decided to throw a fishing rod, blonde asshole. Everything, deny Naruto, the fox growled, raging in the cage. I'm more infuriated by the way he looks at me with disgust in these gloves. How much I disgust him, Alivolos said in his thoughts, but at the same time answering. Well, you know, there was a feeling that someone was whispering. Only it was impossible to tell, too quiet, and quickly disappeared. Nodding either to his words or to his thoughts, Namikaze, without ceremony, picked up the boy's t-shirt and carefully began to study the seal on his stomach, checking his fingers. With fingers soaked in chakra, the integrity of the castle symbols. Then he ran his fingers over the scars on his cheeks and finally lifted the guy's upper lip, looking at the fangs. Yes, you're fucking crazy. Naruto went berserk, already preparing to use a scalpel, but quickly came to his senses, remembering the possibility. Consequences. As I thought, well, on the whole everything is fine. Kage said more cheerfully, throwing the gloves into the trash and heading for the exit. See you later, Naruto. Oh, Kondison, take away his scalpel before he hurt himself, or somebody gets hurt. And I thought you didn't notice, Senju grinned, approaching the boy and demanding that her hand be returned to the property of the hospital. You quite rightly do not trust others, but trust me, we're not enemies. Namikaze said one last thing before finally leaving. Left the ward. Not bad, smiled Tsunade, patting the boy on the head, but the disgruntled child almost immediately stopped her, sniffing discontentedly. An orphan, then, Senju whispered, taking the scalpel. Looking at Naruto, her lips trembled treacherously, showing that she wanted to say something, but only smiled sadly. When everyone left the ward, the scarlet-haired man was finally able to breathe a sigh of relief. However, I did not forget to express a couple of affectionate words to two big-eyed shinobi in my thoughts, although this was to be expected. However, he did not have time to say goodbye to past visitors, as he already felt the familiar chakra, which spread in waves through the hospital, and as soon as the door opened, a blue hurricane flew into his arms. How did you feel? Naruto wanted to ask, but abruptly fell silent, seeing two elders slowly entering the ward. Not knowing what to expect from them, he stood up, hiding his sister behind his back. Especially the scarlet-haired one tensed up and was already preparing the kurama chakra, when the old man pasted a piece of paper with a lot of hieroglyphs on the door. Relax, we just came to talk, the old man said. And at this moment, his eyes flashed with a mysterious light, while a satisfied grin spread on his face. By the way, the man was dressed in a black kimono with gold patterns, and there was a scarlet bandage on his right shoulder, with a whirlpool in the middle. His hair was braided into a braid that reached to his calves. There was not a single hint of fatigue in the violet eyes, but just the opposite, as if they belonged to a young guy who had only excitement on his mind. The image was completed by a square goatee with a lush mustache. His companion wore a white kimono with gold patterns, and the headband was black, but still with the same scarlet whirlpool. In the middle, her gray hair was tied up in a bun and secured with a gold hairpin. His eyes seemed pale red, but they showed all the aristocratic importance, one might even say arrogance. Nice to meet you, Naruto-kun. My name is Matami, and my husband is Banri. He is the current head of the Uzumaki clan. At that moment, the Alivolos remembered the book he had read yesterday, and the picture slowly began to take on a whole appearance. The truth was still blurry for him. Nice to meet you, the young man bowed his head slightly. May I know the reason for your visit, right to the point? I like it. Banri nodded contentedly, raising his hand, he squeezed his palm, and after a pop of smoke he had a pipe. If you have read the book we gave you, then perhaps you could guess about your kinship with our clan. But to find out for sure, we have to do a check. Do you mind? The old man asked, exhaling smoke. The clan then, it can become a good and promising one, if their reputation corresponds to what is written. Then I can avoid many problems and ensure Sasuke a normal life. All right, the boy nodded, waiting for further actions from the newcomers. This leaf reacts to the chakra and blood. The purer your blood, the darker the light will be. Matami explained, placing a piece of paper on the inside of the guy's forearm. Immediately, the leaf turned a rich red, filling with a darker shade, until it stopped at a dark scarlet, almost black. It can't be, the surprised old woman whispered, covering her mouth with her hand. Pure blood. The old man grinned with satisfaction again, shifting his gaze from the paper to the boy's perplexed face. Do you know what that means? You are the heir of the main family, and the heir of the clan will appoint you. Are you ready to shoulder such a burden? Naruto warily rearranged himself, squinting at the old man. I must say right away, although our clan is great, but now it is going through its worst years. I'm too old to lift him off my knees. You're young, you've already proved your strength by killing Chunins, but that won't be enough. You will have to go through hellish training, go through physical, emotional and mental pain to become a worthy head who will revive Uzumaki. So are you ready for this? Yes, Naruto answered decisively, looking at his sister, who pressed herself into her brother and looked at him with concern. The only condition is that Sasuke will also join the clan. Only as a member of a side branch, Uzumaki cherish their pure blood, Matami said, examining the girl. Wait, but what about the ban on the adoption of Jinchuriki? There were a couple of families who wanted to take me in, but they were immediately refused. Believe me, for us it will not be a problem, especially after confirming that you Uzumaki. They will not be able to go against its own laws. And if they try to refuse, you'll regret it, because we'll collect your village on the stones. Remember, Uzumaki always cherish their blood. The Banri spoke with some pride, exhaling a cloud of smoke that resembled the clan's coat of arms. Shizunya-chan said that you had a difficult day today, so we will visit you tomorrow. Rest, Naruto-kun. Caring Matami said, escorting everyone out of the ward. The residents of the Jabanri Hawk decided not to delay the introduction of children into the clan, so after sending the ladies home, he went to chat with us cause. Walking proudly through the corridors, he nodded to everyone who had the courage to greet at the Uzumaki, and there were few of them. They were mostly war veterans who had to fight with the elder shoulder to shoulder. The others tried to look away, pretending that they were not there. At that moment, Banri thought that there was not so much difference between him and Naruto, they were both feared and hated. The only difference is how they appeared. Society. I have a lot of work ahead of me, Uzumaki nodded to his thoughts, thinking over a training plan for his successor. Hokage herself is very busy and does not accept anyone. I decided to warn the secretary, who was all pale, and that looks. He will lose consciousness. What a pity, the old man replied, opening the door without any hesitation. It seems that the zombie sitting at the table did not even notice the newcomer. Although it was difficult to understand that someone was sitting at the table, because large stacks of papers allowed only to see a couple of protruding strands of hair of the owner of the office. This is certainly not what you expected when you dreamed of becoming a Kage. The old man smiled, remembering how young Minato insisted that he would take the post of Hiruzen. Uzumaki sat down on the sofa, slowly lighting his pipe. I was waiting for Kaga's brain to work. We haven't seen Banrison for a long time. Namikaze perked up, because for him it was a breath of fresh air among all the waste paper. Can you not smoke in the office? Yes, Hiruzen smoked it a long time ago, or do you think these walls are painted? I'll tell you a secret, the walls are simple, they absorb nicotine, so they turn yellow. I know this very well. You just can't imagine how much work it cost me to get rid of this smell. In any case, you just came in to chat, or you have some kind of emergency that will not do without my help. Initially, I wanted to go make everything official, but after thinking about it, I realized that it would be easier and faster through you. I need Jinchuriki, And the girl that he carries around with him all the time, exhaling a puff of smoke, said Banri. Naruto-kun and Sasuke. I'm surprised you know their names. I should have called him by name right away, otherwise it sounded a little rude. I hate Kubi, but it's not Naruto's fault. I admit, it's hard for me to contain my emotions. I, like everyone else, see him as a demon, not a child. Minato closed his eyes, swallowing an unpleasant lump, and, sighing, continued. I want him to live happily. He needs some kind of support in this hell, but I can't break the law. He's an Uzumaki, a pureblood. As proof, the old man showed a scarlet leaf and put it on the table. You can send it for examination if you don't believe it. But as important as it is, KESHINA was testing him. He was rootless, couldn't believe his eyes. Hokage jumped up from his chair and ran to the table to check the sheet. So, the niece is not as good at fuinjutsu as she says. It will be necessary to conduct a test to make sure of her competence, Uzumaki said thoughtfully, scratching his beard. Anyway, I'm glad you found each other. The main thing is that he does not come running to me, and tearfully begged me to deprive you of your guardianship rights. Don't worry, he won't have the strength to crawl to you. Namikaze smiled at this answer. He went to the drawers and began rummaging through them in search of the necessary papers. Having found the required document and filled it out, he handed it to Banri. This is the time for confirmation. Keep it with you until I get the basic paperwork ready. I think it's not necessary to explain what documents you need to prepare. A week later, at last, the hellish days in the hospital came to an end, and it was possible to return home, or rather, to a new home. Albaloi himself swore that don't have here, so the time spent is almost on the table for dissection, he'll remember for a lifetime. Finished to reflect on how smashed the hospital, Naruto noticed that he walks the streets of Konoha, not at night in peace and quiet, like he used to, and the day when the life of the universe rages most of all. True, there was silence now, only because of him and his guardians. People clearly had a lot of words in his direction, but the aura emanating from Uzumaki made it clear that it was all the better to be silent and to look away, which the residents did, tolerating the demon calmly walking down the street among them. The only one who didn't care about what was happening around was Sasuke. She was quite skipping along, holding hands with Mats. She was filled with joy now, because her brother was finally returning home. When they approached the territory of the quarter, Naruto was, to put it mildly, surprised. From what he read, he learned that Uzumaki had a large clan, but there were 10 houses on the territory of the clan. And as it turned out later, only one of them was residential, the rest had been empty for 6 years. The houses, although they had a beautiful exterior design, but they were standard 2-story buildings, which are not so difficult to find in Konoha. Although, as far as he remembers, there are also such houses in the quarters of other famous clans. Only they usually stood on the outskirts of the territory. As soon as they entered the house, Sasuke immediately decided to give her brother a tour. From the hallway, one could get into both the kitchen and the living room, where there was access to the inner garden through the terrace. On the first floor, there was also a room for tea ceremonies, which the old man mainly used as a smoking room, and a place for important negotiations. On the second floor, there were 5 rooms, one of which Banri allocated for his office, and the rest were bedrooms with private baths. More than the structure of the house, Naruto was interested in the fact that his sister walked around the house and never crashed, perfectly maneuvering between furniture. The only theory that came to his mind was that the background of the chakra, visible to the sensors, emanating from everything, even the walls. After the tour ended, Matami called Sasuke to help with dinner, and Naruto went to his room. In the middle of the left wall, there was a bed, and on the sides, there was a wardrobe with a bedside table. The table was against the wall opposite the door, where there was also a window. In the far right corner, there was an easel with several empty canvases, as well as paint brushes. It means that someone has already lived here before me, the scarlet-haired man concluded, turning his attention to the door. There was a bathroom behind it. Taking off the rags that had once been his clothes, he decided to throw them away, realizing that there was nothing to save. And after a long time, he finally found himself under a stream of hot water. The last time he took a normal shower, he was still in the hospital, and then he had to use a basin or the nearest river. Refreshed, Uzumaki hopefully went to the closet, and, seeing that it was completely packed with various things, exhaled with relief. He would not like to dress again in torn clothes, which he threw away without thinking. It would be awkward to beg for new things without having time to come. We need to ask about the things that Ayami-san gave us. Mentally, Naruto left a note for himself, wearing a black t-shirt with a whirlpool sign on the back and Biju shorts. Uzumaki fell on the bed and yawned, feeling that the body requires sleep. Apparently, sleepless nights in the hospital are far from being felt. He felt threatened in that place, even though the fox stubbornly claimed otherwise. Here I felt completely safe, which, of course, was strange. Before the boy took Morpheus in his arms, there was a knock at the door. Reluctantly, but he still got up and opened the door, behind which his sister was standing. "Sorry to wake you up, but Grandma called for dinner." Grandma, Naruto was surprised. It didn't immediately occur to him when she meant Sasuke. "Mata-misan," she sighed, prompting her brother. "Okay, I'll be right there." After closing the door, Uzumaki decided to wash first to finally remove drowsiness. Quickly going downstairs, he went to the kitchen, but before he could show his nose in the room, an object flew past him with a whistle, which turned out to be a ladle sticking out of the wall. "This time I forgive you, but next time this ladle direct fire will send you to the hospital." Matami stood behind the stove and smiled sweetly, although she exuded a creepy aura. But it seemed that the other residents of the house did not seem to notice this, continuing to sit quietly at the table. Take note, never anger Matami-san. Naruto bowed his head as a sign of forgiveness and sat down at the table, where he faced the problem of knowledge of the lack of etiquette. The only way out, so as not to hit in the face in front of his fellow clansmen, was to repeat the banri, who noticed the boy's gaze, which made him break into a slight smile. "Eat quietly, Naruto-kun. In the near future, Matami will teach you how to behave properly at the table, so you can calm down. It's better to tell us about your life before you came to us," the old man suggested, propping his chin with his palm, and watching with interest, looking at the future chapter. "To be honest, I have nothing to tell you," said Alavalasi, stopping the meal, and, closing his eyes, began to search through the recesses of his memory for memories. All life in the orphanage similar to white spots with occasional glimpses. But I perfectly remember emotions and feelings from that time: hunger, cold, fear, anger, pain. Only Sasuke was a warm ray of light in this darkness. Come to think of it, I can't remember anything specific either. Thinking, Sasuke said, frowning. The elders looked at each other, as if they were mentally talking to each other, which, of course, did not escape Uzumaki's gaze. "Do you have any idea what this might be related to?" The boy immediately asked the question, looking from the elder to his wife, looking for clues in their facial expressions. "The first thing that comes to mind is blocking memories. The brain blocks your access to certain areas from the past in order to protect your mind." Matami made a suggestion and, closing her eyes, returned to food intake. "A lie," the fox firmly stated, although Lavalasi guessed it himself, but did not elaborate on this topic, leaving it for a more convenient occasion. "I hired mentors for you. They are one of the best in their fields, you can be sure. Your training will begin tomorrow at 6 a.m. This will be a standard lift for you, but I advise you to be on the alert." Benri changed the conversation vector. "All right, then, with your permission, I'll go. Good night to you." Naruto wished and, before going to his room, put the dishes in the sink behind him. While in the room, he changed his clothes and, lying down comfortably, plunged into the subconscious. "What can you say about the protection around the house and the territory of the clan?" Uzumaki immediately got down to business, sitting down opposite the fox. "Have you ever opened that book that those old people gave you?" Kyubi snorted, knocking his jinchuriki to the ground with a jet of air. "Is it really that bad?" Uzumaki asked, sprawled on the grass. "Ha, It'll be easier for me to get out of the seal than for you to sneak in unnoticed. If you don't understand, they are masters of fuinjutsu. So, while I play by the rules of the banri, Naruto sighed, finally sinking into sleep. A dark silhouette was sneaking around the room with a katana raised to strike. A wave, and the weapon rushed to the scarlet-haired man's neck. Naruto abruptly opens his eyes and blocked the blow with a kitchen knife. And the mats searched for this knife yesterday. They were already afraid that dementia had begun. The old man grinned, continuing to crush with a wooden katana. If you wanted to teach a lesson, you shouldn't have given a hint. The boy smiled in response, and, dodging the blow, rolled on the floor, pointing the knife at the opponent. So, you have learned the lesson that you need to be always on the alert. I've lived surrounded by bastards who hate me. Here, like it or not, you will get a light sleep. But what the scarlet-haired man definitely could not have expected was a blow from the back with a frying pan on the head. Firm which sparks flew out of his eyes. That's who gave you permission to take a knife, huh? I thought I was going crazy. It's also hard to think about grandma. While Matami continued to wail at Uzumaki, mentally cursing Kuromu, holding on to the bump, Alice had no choice but to justify herself and gradually go underground. After moving into the inner garden, Naruto could still hear the old woman indignantly in the kitchen, while Sasuke was bandaging her head. A victim of domestic violence? At the same time, the old man was smoking a pipe, leaning on a wooden weapon, and just enjoying the cool morning air. When the first aid was finished, the tube disappeared in a cloud of smoke, and one of the katanas was thrown into his hands. The heir. Although the Uzumaki are known as fuinjutsu masters, our clan was also famous for its excellent kinjutsu skills. In particular, your great-grandfather KESHINA adored the battle on blades. Is it in the style of fighting with two katanas? I prefer to use one. It was also popular in our clan to use the stand katana. Banri explained this not by standing in one place, but by slowly circling around his student, striking unexpected blows from all possible directions, testing Naruto's reaction and skills. A sad picture. We'll have to start from the very basics, the old man concluded, looking at the boy with a note of disappointment. Better tell me, will I be able to create my own style without this tedium? I don't want to imitate anyone. Rising to his feet, Naruto asked. He winced from the pain, but, overcoming himself confidently, bared his teeth, stretching his katana in the direction of the old man. Without the necessary knowledge, it will only be a laughing stock for swordsmen. But since you have taken the initiative, I will help you create the perfect style. The old man smiled, throwing in a straightforward attack. The blow from the bottom up was blocked by the scarlet-haired man, but he did not hold the weapon, and it soared into the air. Undeterred, the impudent youngster makes a cut, firm which the banri easily evades, and was followed by a horizontal swing. The air jumped and used the blade as a support to take a higher altitude. Grabbing his weapon, Naruto decided to strike vertically. Only for an experienced warrior, it was too easy to block. While still in the air, Uzumaki directs his body forward, making a sala. Behind the opponent's back, believing that victory was in his pocket, the scarlet-haired man smiled, waving his katana, but the mentor turned out to be faster. Having managed not only to bounce off the line of attack, but also to strike back, putting an end to the duel. Audacious, Banri concluded. I have only seen such arrogance in battle from the owners of Kiba swords. I can congratulate you, you are a little higher than stupid nepotists. That doesn't sound like much of a compliment, grinned Alavalasi, falling on the grass. We will start practicing punches and racks tomorrow. Now you have a break for breakfast and treatment. Then there will be taijutsu and ninjutsu lessons with shuriken jutsu, then a lunch break, followed by the basics of poisons and physiologists. Then you will go to the Nara clan to learn the wisdom of strategy. On my return from these lentils, I will tell you about politics. And the rest of the time, Mito will start teaching you etiquette, fuinjutsu and our history. Only after that dinner and lights out. The scarlet-haired man's eyes wanted to pop out of his forehead from the schedule, but holding them in place, he nodded confidently. He was told that the training would be difficult, and he agreed to it. Have you finished yet? Matami asked, looking out from behind the door. Then it's time for Sasuke-chan to train in Iron Jutsu. But you said we were going to train on dead fish, the girl reminded, sitting down opposite her brother and rubbing her hands. There is not much difference, the old lady waved away, watching the process. I am surprised that Sasuke started studying medical techniques so quickly. Naruto asked the question that worried him, the blonde one, closing his eyes. Surprisingly, it has a good system. Channels of the chakra, even with constant use of sensors, this is a very good result, Banri explained, printing the tube again. AI, why does the chakra burn so much? The scarlet-haired man exclaimed, jumping away from his sister, holding onto his back, on which a burn was about to appear. So you have a predisposition to katana, Sasuke-chan. How many more secrets are you hiding from us? The old lady smiled, massaging the cheeks of the named granddaughter. I don't know, the brunette muttered, enjoying being squeezed. That is, according to the sensations from the medical chakra, you can understand the predisposition, Naruto decided to clarify. Looking at the old man. This is more like a side effect due to inexperience, because she can't completely clear her chakra yet. Which is why there is a more noticeable trace of the owner's internal energy. As you understand, if it burns, it's fire, lightning tingles. You feel the heaviness means Daten, and Sutona will know you. The worst option is the wind, because it will leave micro-scratches on the areas of touch. Briefly told the interim head, watching his wife and the energetic girl with a smile. Having finished with the treatment of bumps and bruises, Uzumaki almost attacked the food, but restrained himself. Calmly starting breakfast, only immediately regretted it, because the taijutsu mentor arrived. And the heir was simply kicked out without further ado. From home, warning for the future that you should be more agile, because it is unknown when the enemy may descend. Nice to meet you, I am Maeda Guy, known as the Green Beast of Kanohi. Tell me, the power of youth is burning in you, exclaimed a man in a green leotard with a sparkling smile and showing his thumb. It was pointed out to the scarlet-haired that he would go blind because of the shine of his teeth. Power. What? The boy's brain boiled, he was simply stumped by such a question. Well, the power of youth is an explosion, an energy that always helps us to be cheerful and strong. While our flowers of youth are blooming, we must train and develop in order to protect what it is not a pity to give our lives for. There was an awkward silence. At first, the boy thought it was all nonsense, but scrolling through the words in his head, they made sense. Therefore, in order to somehow support the mentor, he applauded. I knew that someday I would find a student who would understand the power of youth. Here you go. Tears were streaming from Maeda's eyes. This Naruto was already all wet, but Guy did not even think to let him go, but only thrust into his hands the same green leotard as himself. Thank you, of course. Do you have a different color scheme, or, let's say, it can be repainted? The scarlet-haired man asked when he was able to get out of the embrace. I've never thought about it. If the suit was a different color, would you wear it? As if at the behest of a switch, Guy was already sitting, immersed in his thoughts, and scratching his chin. Well, if it was black or gray, it would be worn with shorts. The material is quite comfortable and breathable. Then it's decided. Maeda jumped up, pointing his finger first at the sky, and then at the boy. From now on, you, the black animal of Kanaki, are the disciple of the green beast of Kanaki. This is all cool, of course, but can we start training? The power of youth burns so strongly in you, I am so proud of you, my disciple. Guy gave a thumbs up and smiled again, making Naruto wince from the glitter. I will not torment you, in addition to physical exercises, I will teach you combat. Goken style, the purpose of which is to damage the opponent's bones. But physically strong shinobi can use it. Before we start your training, let's first find out your current limit. At first Naruto was scared, because if Maeda is so strange in principle, then what kind of horror can he come up with in terms of training? But it turned out to be all banal and simple. These are the most common exercises with your weight: running, jumping rope, push-ups, squats, twisting, pulling up, walking on your hands, practicing strokes. And only then had it all runs as long as you don't collapse to the ground. You showed a good result, Heidova praised the water bottle. And you train like this every day? The out-of-breath asked Uzumaki before greedily devouring the liquid. No, you have a simplified version of training, because there are other classes besides this, and I fully devote myself to training. You, Kakashi monster, have come to challenge me, the mentor exclaimed, pointing his finger at a man in a bulletproof vest, under which there was a black shirt, on the shoulders of which was the symbol of the Kanohi police with the Hatake clan emblem inside. Above the black trousers was a gray apron with dark blue diamonds open from the front. He was walking slowly towards us, not looking up from reading. And hello to you, guy. Ash sighed at his hair, looking away from the book. No, I was asked to teach him ninjutsu and shurikenjutsu. Then good luck to you when Mato ran away in only one direction known to him. The two remaining ones glared at each other, noticing every detail in appearance. I thought only Uchi were recruited to the police, the scarlet-haired one broke the silence. I'm an exception, Kakashi muttered, sitting down under a tree. Let's say your name is Uzumaki Naruto. I know perfectly well. Guy told you my name, but I'm Hatake Kakashi. I've had a very heavy night shift, so let's get this over with quickly. Do you know what a chakra is? Yes. Great. Then you should know what is created when combining physical and spiritual energy. You train the first part with Guy, and the second part through meditation, that is, you can do this alone. And how will you understand that it's time to proceed to the next stage? You will understand for yourself. Your channels and chakra points are too weak and narrow, a tiny amount of chakra moves along them. This is understandable. Uzumaki interrupted, sitting down opposite. Or do you want to say that when I feel the chakra flowing through the channel, then I will be ready for the next stage? That's right, since you've figured it out, let's test your knowledge of shurikenjutsu. Kuna and shurikens and senbons. I have tried a nutritious weapon and have an idea about it. Well, let's demonstrate it, Haddock suggested, throwing it under the students' bags. First I'll create 5 targets, throw kunai at them, then shurikens. If the result suits me, then we'll try with moving ones. After receiving a nod in response, Kakashi, folding the seals, created 5 dogs from lightning, which scattered in different directions. To Alavalasev's disappointment, only 3 kunai reached the goal, and with shurikens, he hit 2 creatures from the chakra. Why did you shout such a disgruntled face? That's not a bad result for your age. This is understandable. I'm more interested in why the dogs from the chakra were used, and not the usual targets. It was interesting where you were going to aim, the ash-haired man explained, taking a flower out of his breast pocket. After printing it out, a human-shaped target appeared out of the haze. Having imbued his finger with chakra, Hatake began to trace the areas on the silhouette. This is a standard target in the police department, only without zones for hits, which to me seem illogical. Therefore, remember, if you want to kill a person, then the kunai is best suited. Aim at the neck, eyes, bend your knees and elbows. Shurikens are suitable for immobilizing the target. If you can break a tendon, then the victim will not escape from you anywhere. Senbons can cope with both tasks, but we will deal with this later. Because you will first need to study the structure of the circulatory and nervous system. While you can start practicing, Kakashi turned out to be the complete opposite of Guy. Smart, but terribly lazy. Read his book most of the time, occasionally giving advice. Or just humming. So it was until Hatake suddenly ordered to stop, saying that the training was over. Outwardly, he looked calm, but for Naruto, and especially for Kyubi, there was immediately a well-concealed anxiety. Giving tips on meditation, he was about to leave, but the cold, slightly playful voice made Paulina Salcido to freeze on the spot. You won't even say hello like Ashikin. Hello, Orochimaru-sensei. Haddock muttered, turning to the distant tree, from behind which he himself came out. In a gray kimono. How are you? Everything is as usual, except for the new student. Peekaboo, then you might not have called me. I think you could handle my part of the training. Although the specimen is interesting, it is worth my attention, the snake chuckled, licking. Studying the scarlet-haired man with his eyes. In any case, I'm a practitioner, and in theory I can't compare with you. Kakashi did not react to Sanen's last words in any way and, waving goodbye, simply disappeared. Hiroishin didn't even say that he had learned it. Arakamaru was playfully offended, but quickly returned to his new student. Let's go inside, Naruto-kun. As you say, Banri allocated a meeting room for classes. First of all, you will pass a test, on the basis of which I will decide what to do with you next. Reikimaru explained, as she printed out a piece of ink and placed it in front of Alivolos. 3 directions were identified in the test: the chakra, the system, human anatomy, and the properties of foods. Thanks to the book's firm The Found Laboratory, Uzumaki knew the answers to all the questions, and after rechecking the answers, he handed over the sheet. Sanen did not react in any way to the fact that he finished so quickly, but after quickly running through the text, Arakamaru flashed his eyes, and, breaking into a smile, turned his gaze to the student. Last question, what is Editenzi? The forbidden technique of unholy resurrection created by Tobirama Senju. The victim's body is used as a vessel for the temporary residence of the soul of the dead. The summoner cannot be killed, he does not run out of chakra. But he will have only half the strength of the one he had during his lifetime. The technique itself can unwind when the life force of the victim runs out. So, after all, you're the little fox that got into my first lair. Badly hidden, since the child was able to find it, Naruto replied, looking at Sanen with a challenge. You've got a lot of nerve, the snake squinted, licking his lips. There is nothing valuable and important there anymore, you can appropriate it for yourself about your training. It doesn't make sense to train you here. My student will come to you tomorrow and take you to the laboratory. Arakamaru left the office, and when he came to his senses and ran after him, there was no trace of him. Not even a trace of the chakra remained. Then Alivalasev was expected by Sheik Kunara, who preferred to conduct his classes at home. Naruto, with all his heart, did not want to see those hateful looks again, but he did not argue. Luckily, it went Banri, which he clearly will be calmer. As Naruto expected, the presence of the old Uzumaki will reduce the desire of most to stare at him, and even more so, to shout something at him, but a whisper behind his back, making the blood boil. Damn demon! How can this monster have such noble blood? Anyway, he brainwashed them. It looks like Uzumaki has gone completely crazy. The boy jerked to look the crowd in the eye and say everything that had accumulated in his soul, but Banri stopped him by grabbing his shoulder and shaking his head. Perceiving this as a training of concentration and patience, Naruto walked the rest of the way with his head held high, trying not to notice the noise of garbage around him. In the course of entering the Guardian's quarter, Nara let him into the clan's territory without further questions, confirming that the head was expecting guests. Knocking on the door, they were opened by a boy, about the age of Uzumaki's heir, with a typical Nara hairstyle. What? The kid asked through a yawn, picking his ear with his finger. Shikamaru, how do you greet the honored guests? The woman exclaimed, running up to her son and slapping him on the back of the head. Sorry, Banri-san, Naruto-san. Is Shikaku at home? The old man asked as he walked into the house. I'm here for you Naruto to bring home, or can be taken after the training, I asked the head of sloths, looking out of the room. I'd like to observe. Without objecting to Banri's request, Shikaku led his guests to the terrace, where he seated the heirs behind the shogi playing field. I'm too lazy, maybe you can play by yourself, Shikamaru suggested, falling to the floor. It's good for you to stretch your brains, especially while you're still young. Quickly came up with an excuse for Nara. Resigned to his fate, the lazy genius still started the game. The party was always held in complete silence. As a result of a long and intense game, Shikamaru won. Good game, I hope we'll play again, praised Nara, holding out his hand. Likewise, Uzumaki replied dryly, more focused on his defeat. Not bad, you've been playing shogi for a long time, Naruto. Shukaku became interested, scratching his beard. I hardly played, there were few people in the shelter who could, and who would want to play with me. I think he's had enough for today. Tomorrow, we will devote the day to the basics of strategy. The head explained, seeing off Uzum. While it's going on, I think I'll tell you about the clans. Moving away from the borders of the Shadowmen, the old man spoke. On the street, you are not afraid that we will be overheard by a 2-level seal. A mixture of an illusory and a sound barrier. We can't. There will be neither eavesdropping nor lip-reading, Banri explained, attaching a seal to the scarlet-haired man's shoulder. Now listen carefully. Nara's Yamanako and Akimichi are in an alliance that was formed during the era of warring states. They united because of stronger clans that could exterminate them. Since then, they have been working in threes, and Kimichi are melee fighters with good protection. The Nara worked at an average distance, catching opponents with their bonds and coordinating the actions of the team. Yamanaka operated from afar, being more like support and communication with headquarters and other groups. Apart from the military alliance, it was also profitable for them to trade with each other and exchange goods. Nara was provided with deer and antlers and some plants with mushrooms, which grow only on the territory of their forest. Yamanako have great knowledge in botany and help Akimichi not only with herbs and flowers, but also in the development of drugs. On what terms did you agree on my training with Shikaku? I asked Naruto about the job. There is one interesting thought in my head, the establishment of relations between our clans and a small discount on seals. I've come up with something. The Nara clan itself is not interesting to me. I like the idea of establishing relations with Akimichi on drugs through them more, and in a successful case they joined to their pharmaceutical union, if it turns out to advance in training with Orochimaru. It's a good idea, but it's not that simple. Our clan is weak at the moment, and if they feel an influence over us, then just absorb from us. We need to act carefully and think through everything we need. Lots of moves forward, especially when dealing with Naro. But we will discuss this later, and now we will return to the topic. As you correctly noted, Akimichi, with the support of their allies, occupied a large part of the market of medicines, not only trading personally, but also supplying them to the hospital and the armament of the village. They have almost become monopolists in this area. The Narages settled not only in military positions as strategists, but also as political figures. When you get to the residence of the KG, you will notice that they are almost the majority of the entire staff there. The habitat of the ima on the skin became interrogated in the internal organs of the village. Now they are trying to put down their roots in the military police together with the Nara. But the head of the Uchi is still holding his position, although the pressure is enormous. It turns out that they put down their roots wherever they can to gain more influence, right? The more influence they have, the more they will be able to promote their interests in the council. And at best someone from their clan will take the post of hokage. And what will it affect? The most striking example is Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third hokage. For his clan, he beat the best contracts and promoted laws for the benefit of Sarutobi. At that time, these merchants occupied the top in the hierarchy of clans, and after Hiruzen's resignation, they became on a par with the Union and on Shikacho. The primacy was returned to Sneeze and Hyuga at the expense of their strength and status. How then does the fourth affect this system? This is the most successful option. He is rootless and tries to adhere to neutrality, keeping the economy and domestic politics in balance. The only thing is that Hiruzen periodically tilts the cup in his direction. But he will not be able to act as openly and brazenly as before. The lesson is over. What? Naruto was surprised, only now noticing that they had already returned to the territory of their clan. How quickly time flew by, at least Uzumaki and had to focus Hatami words, but all his thoughts revolved around the story bone. Political games aroused an incredible interest in him, because the path of intrigue seemed to him much more interesting than competing in strength. So many options were swarming in his head, and this is only the first day. What else interesting can the old man tell me? Naruto, be careful if you don't want to explode, Matami warned, looking at a piece of paper, standing behind him. What's wrong? The boy broke out of his thoughts, examining his seal. If you continue this line, Instead of a bright flash, you will get a mini explosion. This feature of our prints, if you make at least one inaccurate curl, in the best case it doesn't work. And then the Shinigami himself knows what will happen. Uzumaki's school day ended in the company of Sasuke, who were allowed to attend the lessons of etiquette and the history of the clan. It was such a hateful day again, but no matter how much I would like to spend these days on the bed, the body stubbornly insisted that I need to get up. After all, the memory still pops up those times when he tried to break his regime. And either he was woken up with the help of a buoy, with blows to the head or stomach, and in those cases, when his grandmother got to him, after a short flight from the window, he successfully cheered up by swimming in the pond. Sighing heavily, Uzumaki nevertheless overcame himself, and, getting up, went to the bathroom. After taking a shower, he stared at his reflection, and pulled back his eyelids, examining the burst vessels. No matter how hard and exhausting the training sessions were, insomnia did not let him go. Naruto could only sleep with half an eye. Of course, to equate with the way he slept before, the situation became better. But he still wanted to get a good night's sleep at least once. In order to remove bags under the eyes, Mats gave him some powder, so that the signs of lack of sleep was gone. And to get rid of painful eyes he used the drops. The final touch is to tie his hair in a bun, because recently they have begun to interfere with him. And no one has cancelled the traditions of the clan. Matami and Banri did not skimp on clothes for their grandchildren, but in connection with daily training, Naruto wore a black jumpsuit, presented by Mado Guy, and over gray shorts with salty elements, and wrapped his wrist with elastic bandages with brushes. On the left eye, there was a black patch with the clan's coat of arms. Entering the kitchen, he greeted the other inhabitants of the house. Sitting down at the table, Naruto immediately began to read the lines of the newspaper, which the old man held out. Interestingly, as I assumed, the stock market is slowly starting to fall down. Banri smiled, scratching his beard. We are not the same financially strong players, I do not argue with that. The situation in many clans will be shaken, but we are unlikely to be able to do anything, concluded Naruto, returning the newspaper and starting breakfast. Believe me, thanks to this, we will be able to tip the weight a little. So today, instead of training, you will have courier missions. We need to deliver papers to some people. And it won't be suspicious, yet I'm in sight and hearing for many, no matter how it turns out sideways. I've thought of everything, you don't have to worry. Give me the papers then, the scarlet-haired man sighed, getting up from the table. Have you eaten yet? Matami was surprised, looking into the boy's plate. I'm sorry, but I'm not really hungry. I'm sorry, Grandma, but since I had the opportunity to get out of the clan, I have to leave a place for ramen. Sasuke, please bring the bag that we prepared yesterday. Banri asked, smiling at his granddaughter. Well, the girl nodded and quickly ran to the tea room. Exploiting her, Naruto squinted in disbelief, looking at the old man. She is from a side branch, her task is to help and protect the main one, and she herself expressed a desire to help. Nevertheless, Sasuke's ability to navigate in space with the help of the chakra surprises me greatly. If you don't know about her problem, then you can't say that there is such a thing, Banri thought, scratching his beard, and his gaze focused on the scarlet-haired one. Could it be because of the influence of the chakra to Yubi? I have no idea, neither Kurama nor I did it intentionally. Who do I need to pay a visit? Nara, Arakimaru, 3 and 4 Hokage, and Yoshida Haririchi. Who is Haririchi? A blacksmith lives and works in a blacksmith shop, on the outskirts of the village, in the direction of the Hokage monuments. All the papers are signed, and in case they don't want to miss it, I put a clan seal. Questions at all just disappear. Got it. She nodded lovolosa to the explanation of the head, and, thanking her sister for bringing the bag, headed for the exit. Stepping over the barrier, the Uzumaki took a deep breath, feeling as if the shackles were sleeping. Of course, the task of the head was important, but first of all, he began to develop his plan of further actions. First of all, he went to the shopping district, namely to the flower shop. The Yamanako clan, where, according to Grandma, the best plants were sold. Walking down the street, he did not pay attention to the usual hateful glances and whispers, but something seemed strange to him. As if trouble was coming. And it seems to be that column of dust rushing in his direction. Somehow connected with this. Naruto-kun, my dear student, the cry of the green beast was heard, and everything fell into place. I have a day off today, Geisensei, the scarlet-haired man immediately replied, assuming further conversation, but he turned out to be wrong. I know, that's why I ran to look for you. After all, on such a wonderful day for you, you need to give gifts. Here you go. Maida, not without pride, stretched out to weigh down the namesake, holding back tears. So the elder black animal has become, but I hope the strength of youth in you will not fade. Thank you, the scarlet-haired man smiled, immediately trying on weights on his hands and feet. It's not a pity for a beloved student, Jonan smiled, gave a thumbs up and jumped onto the nearest roof. I'll see you again. Sighing, the scarlet-haired man went on, muttering to himself, because Guy's gift turned out to be very heavy and uncomfortable. Entering the store, Naruto froze in place. A variety of smells captivated the boy, making him forget the purpose of arrival. Welcome to the White Rose. How can I help you? The blonde attracted the guest's attention. Leaning her hands on the counter, she smiled contentedly. After all, these are unusual flowers, suggested Lovolos, approaching her coeval. You are right, this is a new development of our clan. The smell of flowers affects the victim's brain, forcing him to go into a trance, concentrating his memory on good memories. Not without pride, she said to the girl, tapping her temple with her finger. But the action is still weak, any external influence, even sound, can remove the effect. Naruto said thoughtfully, tapping his finger on the counter. He was very interested in this idea. It's a pity that he won't be able to take part in this, although one of the Yamanaka clan members is in front of him, and, perhaps, he will get information through her. But this is only the first test. We check actions on clients, you are like similar rabbits. Tat-tat, she explained, making the middle and index finger the ears and the rest of the body for the rabbit, and took a few jumps. I, Yamanaka, and but nice to meet you, the blonde stretched out her hand, smiling sincerely. Naruto froze in place. It turned out to him that the girl was shining like the sun, and there was warmth in her chest. Naruto Uzumaki is also glad to meet you. Quickly recovering himself, the heir of Uzumaki answered the handshake. And how can I help you, Naruto? I need a bouquet of 3 red carnations, 3 purple violets, and white lilies, also 3, and without your special flowers, if possible. The scarlet-haired one decided to make a joke, redder, because he understood how stupid it looked from the outside. But surprisingly he managed to make his new acquaintance laugh. I won't this time. It is clear that you are going to visit someone, but next time be careful, because I can also fall in love with myself. With the help of these flowers. Yamanaka warned, holding out a bouquet of scarlet hair, and poking her nose with her finger. Eno, is everything all right there? A woman who looked very much like a young Yamanaka asked as she left the warehouse. Yes, Mom, I'm just talking to a new friend, the blonde replied carelessly, turning to her mother. But immediately tensed as soon as she saw the expression on her face. Now the woman looked like a genin who faced death for the first time. I think I'll go, goodbye. Quickly assessing the situation, Naruto said, putting the money for the flowers, and almost flying out of the store. It is obvious that Ina sees a person in him, for the first and last time, now in the eyes of a blonde, he will be a demon. Did you remember him? The woman asked in a trembling voice, leaning on the counter, feeling her legs give way. Of course, Naruto has a very distinguished appearance, the girl replied with a frown, not understanding the reaction. Mother's reaction. It doesn't matter what the demon's name is, stay away from him, because you talk to the nine-tailed fox. And don't even think about insulting his clan, otherwise you will curse yourself. You better stay away from him. Mom, I think you're being dramatic. Naruto is an ordinary boy, like Choji and Shikamaru. The girl laughed, but when she saw her mother's angry look, it quieted down. I'll have to take you to the temple and throw away this dirty money, the elder Yamanaka said, returning back to the warehouse, muttering something under her breath. Right now, the blonde chuckled, putting the money in her pocket. If you don't see a person in him, it doesn't mean that everyone thinks so. Adjusting the flower, Naruto breathed a sigh of relief. After all, if he hadn't oriented himself so quickly, then that blonde would have clearly overestimated the price or taken the flowers. Although no, he's already touched them, so only for the release. Now it was possible to go to visit someone to whom he is very grateful. Fortunately, for the Lovolos cemetery, while it was empty, people usually come here in the evening, some spend time here until dawn, telling about what happened since the last one, by visiting or drinking to the soul of the deceased. All this time, Uzumaki was ashamed to come to the girl's grave, considering himself guilty of what had happened. But he had to come and ring. Passing by each tombstone, he read the names, hoping to find her, but everything was there. Unsuccessfully. Yo, Naruto. Hatake waved his hand listlessly, without looking up from reading the book. Relatives also came to visit, like Ashi-sensei, the scarlet-haired man asked, approaching the mentor. Along the way, that's how I have a mission today. Putting the book in his pouch, Hatake scratched his head and pointed to a scarlet-haired girl sitting in front of the grave. And a blond man stood next to her, putting his hand on the shoulder of his companion. 7 years have passed. They'll be here for a long time. I just need to pass something to Hokage. You can give it to me for now, I'll give it to you later, or take it to the residence, there's a third one there today. Haddock offered, holding out his hand. Sorry, but told me in person to give. I understand. Well, then we can go visit your relatives, while the Hokage family is busy, if anything, the graves of Uzumaki. Thanks, but I need to find Honoku Inishi's grave. Clanless, so then I'll help you look in the opposite direction, Haddock said, walking in the indicated direction. I see Guy managed to give you a gift. Agam, quite as expected from him, the scarlet-haired man smiled, ostentatiously waving a weight on his arm. Still ahead of me, Palynology muttered, squinting his eyes. Muttering something about an argument, he took out 5 multicolored sheets of scanzi from his pocket and handed it to the student. Do you know what to do with it? Nodding in agreement, Alavalasi handed the chakra to the sheets. Only one leaf reacted to the boy's chakra, which crumpled sharply in his hands. He was wearing a yellow kanji lightning bolt. We're lucky, you also have written. The main one, just like mine. Perhaps others will appear later, for example, I have the second element daten. In the meantime, keep this. Kakashi took out a scroll with yellow elements on paper from his breast pocket. Thank you, Kakashi-sensei. No way, Naruto. It's the least I can give you as a mentor. Okay, I will not disturb you. Smiling, Hatake ruffled the boy's hair and nodded towards one grave. Hello, Hanakuzen. Naruto bowed and put flowers in front of the grave. 3 years have passed with the last mentor. Our meeting. I'm sorry for not visiting for so long. I even have nothing to say in his defense. I was just, as always, afraid that you would swear, but I have to apologize. After all, because of me now you have to lie here. I should have refused you then, I knew I wouldn't let you. It will allow you to adopt Jinchuriki under any circumstances. Although no, now I have a grandparent. And, it turns out, I'm from the main branch of the Uzumaki clan. So don't worry, I'm well-fed, dressed and warm. Sasuke also joined the clan. She misses you very much, although she tries not to show it. I even refused your cradles. I would like to hear your voice again. You sang like an angel. Remember, Sasuke and I used to carry candy on the sly. Looks like they've had enough since then. I'm not really eating sweet right now. And my sister has stopped altogether, but she turns around. I also made friends, Toykasan, Ayamasan, and Shikamaru. And today I met my son, but I don't know if she wants to be friends with me. It's just that her mom told me who I really am. Now I have also started to train. After all, the head of the clan is the future. I hope you're doing well there. Uzumaki struggled to hold back tears, speaking with a trembling voice through force. Folding his palms and closing his eyes, he prayed for the girl's soul. Goodbye, Hanakuzen. I will try to welcome you next time. With Sasuke returning back to the attack, the scarlet-haired man noticed that a fourth and his wife were standing with him. Oh, and here's the birthday boy. The ash-haired man lazily stretched out, smiling with his eyes. Today, the bloody Habanura was surprised, studying the boy with her eyes. Congratulations, today is also my children's birthday. KESHINA tried to hint to Mikaze that the cemetery is not suitable for cheerful conversations, but was ignored. Can we all celebrate together? Oh right, I forgot to imagine. I am KESHINA Namikaze, and this is my husband, Minato Namikaze. I've met him before. Naruto smiled falsely, remembering the last meeting. Unfortunately, I have to refuse. I'm not going to celebrate, and I've got my hands full. Sorry, KESHINA-san. I found a way to get out of Uzumaki and handed the letter to Hokage. They asked me to give you this. After handing over the message from the old man, he bowed several times for form's sake, and took pictures while KESHINA was in a thoughtful state, because he understood the Uzumaki girl. He can't argue with that. He has business at 7 years old. No, but have you heard? Liar. The former Uzumaki frowned, not going to leave everything just like that. The cemetery was not far from the residence, so it was logical to go there first and besides, it was immediately possible to find Shikuzen there. Not without a verbal fight, but Lavalin managed to enter the territory of residence and purposefully went to the office Kage, simultaneously trying not to fall on the eyes of the shinobi and strove to throw Leveloka out of the building. May I? Naruto asked, knocking on the door. Come in. The old man croaked, looking up from his papers only when they came into his office. Naruto, what are you doing here? Sarutobi raised his eyebrows, not expecting such a guest. You have a strange career, Kage, librarian, and here is Kage again. Ignoring the question, Alavalasi smiled, holding out an envelope. There are no former Hokage, Hiruzen grinned, accepting the paper and immediately opening it. Aha, how are you? Are you satisfied with everything? Yes, I am. But he was interrupted by a severe illness. Once a person who enters the office without hesitation. Hiruzen, Naruto, did something happen, or were you looking for someone? Shimura asked, approaching the boy and patting his head. Hello, Danzasama. I just came to visit the third one. Okay, I also wanted to drop by to eat, since there was an opportunity to get out. Damn, I had to run into him. It's not enough for him to let his tail go. After waiting for Uzumaki to move away, the head of the root squinted his eye and, tapping his cane, asked, It turns out, only I am forbidden to control. To contact him, he stumbled upon me himself. Still, I own a library, the third muttered, returning to his work. And as I happen to understand, you don't really follow the order either. Like everyone else lately, but we'll leave this question until the meeting. I came to talk about the Uchiha. The brunette waved his hand, sitting down opposite an old friend. And I couldn't ask about Shikaka. Okay, it's unlikely that he will stay at work for a long time. I'd better go to Reikimar then. The easiest way to get to the Snake Sanin laboratory was through the alleys in Wichalaba. The hare was perfectly oriented, but as soon as he approached the turn, sparks flew out of his eyes. Due to a collision with some blonde man with their foreheads. Damn, you can't be more careful, the blonde man muttered, rubbing his forehead. Sorry, I was just in a hurry. Smiling awkwardly, and scratching the back of his head, Naruto held out his hand to his fellow in misfortune. Hey, don't even think about touching him, demon. The brunette said menacingly, throwing a warning kunai in front of Jinchuriki's hand. Stop it, Mamoru. The blonde man spoke in a commanding tone, still accepting help to get up. It's like you hit your head, not me. Don't pay any attention to him. I am Menma Namikaze, and his name is Mamoru Uchiha. Glad to meet you. Namikaze introduced himself, still holding Uzumaki's hand. Naruto Uzumaki too. Nice to meet you. Maybe we'll go to Ramona's to settle the conflict, the blonde suggested, peering into the eyes of the interlocutor. Do you see a conflict here? Just an accidental collision. As it is, I don't mind having a snack, but I think your friend is not particularly happy about this prospect, and on purpose. I need to write. So I'm sorry, the scarlet-haired one explained. With a wave of his hand, he continued walking in the pre-planned direction. In Reikimaru's lair, Uzumaki has long been known to all employees, but he still comes across those who see him for the first time. Just like this time. Did you get anything wrong, Snot? The purple-haired woman asked in a snide tone, grabbing the alavologist by the scruff of the neck. Let him go, Antoine. This is my new pupil, Sanin hissed, approaching his two protectors. You're a little late today. I was sent on an errand today, Naruto explained, squinting at Mitarashi, who continued to hold him by the collar. We can talk in private, Anka is a trusted person, she assured Reikimaru, to which Kunichi smiled triumphantly, and still let the kid go. So, what information did you bring for me? An ordinary letter. That's how. The snake immediately perked up, taking the paper from the student's hands. Nothing new. Reikimaru clicked, immediately burning the document. Can I ask you a few questions? Lara asked. Harry, still not taking his eyes off Madarashi, who continued to follow them. I just wondered if it was possible to release the Kubi into the wild without harming the carrier, to create a vessel. So that it was autonomous from me. Are you crazy? The girl shouted, and then closed her mouth. It's just crazy. As far as I know, your seal is tightly closed, but if you open it a little, and thanks to your relatives, this is possible. Then you will be able to let him out for a walk, only not completely, because otherwise you will die. If you release a part, then the sensors are fast. This will be detected, and in the near future you will be caught, the biju will be extracted, and you are a corpse again. So it's impossible, Sanin concluded, ignoring the reaction of his student. This is all true, but if you find a suitable flexible vessel and apply fui, then the background of the chakra can be reduced to a suitable minimum. But then you will die, and if you think that by leaving the necessary minimum, you will be able to survive, then this is not so. The uncontrolled chakra of the beast will simply destroy your body, as well as the vessel. Didn't you say that it also contains a whole Zaxirabanucleic acid, as in the body? Therefore, there is a chakra, and it is different for different people. It also applies to biju. Having studied the chakras to Yuba, we will be able to create a person perfectly compatible with the fox chakra. Getting rid of the negative influence, no. Then you will become a biju yourself. I need to think about it, Arakimaru quickly said, retiring to his office. Without even letting Naruto say a word. Do you want to get rid of the demon? Anka asked, leaning against the wall. No, I want to give freedom to my friend, he replied dryly. Naruto, heading for the exit. And you're an interesting kid. Mitarashi licked her lips, already looking at the boy in a different way. Bunks have always been distinguished by their lazy nature, and even guarding the gates to their territory, they did it reluctantly. Leaning on the gates and nodding to the newcomer at the Uzumaki, calmly letting him in, without bothering, ask about the purpose of the visit. It always made Naruto smile. For him, the Sloth clan is currently the best in all of Kanoka, with a non-selfish lifestyle, and seemed innate. No malice even towards him. After knocking on the door of the head's house, it was surprisingly quickly opened to him. And it was also a surprise to see a chubby boy who opened the door. Hello, who are you visiting? Chubby asked, opening a pack of chips. This is to the father, Choji, explained the heir to the dissolving from the second floor. Hello, Naruto. Here, this is a birthday present from our family for you. The brunette held out a shogi board made of ebony with gold elements. Now I can come to you to play. Shikamaru, why didn't you warn me? Choji was indignant, realizing that his friend had put him in an awkward position in front of the scarlet-haired one. Here you go. Pooh only gave his pack of chips out of desperation. It's better to take food for Akimichi, it's the best gift. By the way, his name is Akimichi Choji, the heir of his clan. And his Choji name is Uzumaki Naruto, also the future of the scarlet-haired clan. He introduced his friends to each other on the bed, leaning on the jamb. To the door. Thanks. I was taken aback at the Uzumaki, not expecting such a warm welcome. Is your father at home? I think I decided to come home just in time. Scratching his head through a yawn, he said to Shikaku, I understand you came with a letter. From Banrison. Yes. Thank you, do you want to leave it for dinner? The head of the Nara nodded in gratitude, taking the letter. No, thank you. I still have to go to one place. The last place left. Naruto exhaled warily, looking at the rise in the mountains. But what about going to Oshiraka? Suddenly the fox, who had been silent all day, spoke up. I all day so worn out, that is not desirable, and you teach yourself sure will be offended if I refuse to dine, explained Jinchuriki. Up the hill. Don't you think you've become too trusting? I mean, the old man gave you some pieces of paper, and you didn't even check what was written in them. If there is something there, because of which you can be considered a participant in not quite profitable achievements for Konoha. Let's say a revolution. Yeah, you're not funny yourself, Kurama, so I gave the letter to the third and fourth, yes. And in principle to the most important radicalists of the village. Didn't you think it was a distraction? I think you're being paranoid played out, Kurama. It's your business, it's my business to warn, the fox snorted, interrupting the connection with the understanding. It wasn't that hard to find Usid's house. The smoke from the furnaces was still visible on the rise. After knocking on the door, the noise inside immediately stopped. However, not for long. Apparently, the owner of the house ran into something, because the mat was heard all around. Who did Biju bring? A short peasant shouted, looking at the scarlet log. I was asked to give you a letter, Uzumaki replied, looking through the door at the workshop, which was in a disgusting mess. And apparently they hadn't heard about safety here. Oh, so you're the grandson of old Uzumaki, Makuta, right? Naruto? Yes, yes, come in, Saruta. Somewhere here this flower lying around. Ha, Saruta Uzumaki, it suits you. Now I'm going to call it that. You don't mind Sarut. Stop it, Kurama. Something is wrong, Saruta. Here it is, here it is. What's in this scroll? Lovolosa asked, trying to find identification seals on the paper. I wish I could tell you, but then the Banri will rip my head off. Let's just say there's a very important thing there, so don't even think about opening it. That's it, you can go, I still have a lot of work to do. But it started well for Naruto, at least some variety, in the same type of days, but because of one touchy fur coat. Now his thoughts were occupied by the contents of the letters. Of course, he could open the flower that Harira Chesen handed over, but there is a special seal on it, which the old people will accurately determine that an outsider opened it. Wait, Naruto. The scarlet-haired man heard Shikamaru shout behind him. Turning around, he saw Choji and Eno at the same time. What are you guys doing out so late? I asked Uzumaki, only now realizing that I had identified Konoha. Dusk arrived, it seems, was very moved. I mean, you yourself gave your father an invitation to your birthday. You could have been less formal, you don't mind that I took Eno and Choji. Damn you, Kurama, an ancient paranoid, that would be just an assumption. Then you screwed yourself up, Saruto. I didn't know what kind of flowers you like, and in principle I didn't have time to prepare a gift. So I decided to make a bouquet of scarlet roses. Immediately you come to mind. Don't worry, the flowers are completely ordinary. The blonde grinned, handing a bouquet to a friend. It seems to me, or she doesn't think you're a guy, the fox sneered, watching the crimson face of his landlord. Hey, calm down, because I can't tell where the hair ends and the face begins. And I took a cake and good meat, reported on Kimichi Dimon, showing off the complete packages. Let's just hurry up before my parents miss me. Yamanaka asked, grabbing the olivologist by the hand and pulling him towards the block at the Uzumaki. Maybe you should go home so there won't be any problems. Yeah, he ran away. They will also tell me what to do and with whom to communicate. In a relaxed conversation, the company reached the house of the scarlet-haired one, where a brunette was waiting for her brother on the threshold and, sensing his approach, ran towards him, immediately hugging her older brother. After introducing his sister to friends, the heirs finally entered the house, where they almost immediately sat down at a preset table. It was originally planned, Lovely asked the old man, when I managed to step aside from the extra ears. Partly Zagotovilo. The head of Uzumaki stretched out, scratching his beard. By the way, can you at least tell me what's in this scroll? He didn't look at the scroll you gave him. Damn, the years go by, and everything keeps rushing like a brat. I'll look in on him myself tomorrow. Then why did he give it to me? Naruto was twirling a flower in his hand, but before he was answered, there was a knock on the door. The hair was handed over to them by the family of the fourth in full assembly, headed by Suzumaki in her maiden name. And hello again. And we're here to visit, KESHINA said nonchalantly, sitting down at the end, in front of the birthday boy and holding out a box with a cake tied with a ribbon. I'm sorry that without warning, it just happened so spontaneously. He smiled apologetically at Mikaze, holding the twins' hiss and a cane in his arms. Two blondes with violet eyes. They looked at their relatives on their mother's side with interest. The older children ran to congratulate their 1-year-old on their common holiday. Don't worry, Minato, there's enough room for everyone. The man was reassured by Matami, who came up to meet the guests. By the way, I am Namikaze-kun, a blonde with 2 ponytails, at the Uzumaki introduced herself. Naruto, we can move away, KESHINA interrupted her daughter, taking her clansman to Banri's office. What did you want to talk about, KESHINA-san? About your time, the scarlet-haired Sadi said mysteriously. And inviting the boy to do the same. You don't have to worry. Kyubi is under control, tried to calm down Kage Uzumaki's wife. Still, you had a chakra release, and that means that it seeps through the seal, and at this age it was not meant. I wanted to start your training in 2 years, but apparently I will have to shift the timing. Does he not torment you with nightmares? No, we don't interact in any way. I don't know if Hokage herself told you, but sometimes I only hear an unintelligible whisper is the maximum. As for Minato, don't be angry with him for that case, he still reproaches himself for it. Reproaches, well, the fox chuckled into his subconscious, making it clear that there's nothing like that, I'm not offended by him. And I understand perfectly well that for him, and for you I am an eyesore, a reminder of that day. Nothing like that, I'm sorry for ruining such a joyful day for you, but we needed to discuss this. And remember, if you need advice or to speak out, we will always help you, KESHINA said, smiling, heading out of the office. The rest of the evening was spent in a friendly atmosphere. For Naruto and Sasuke, such a picture was wild. There were only them and sometimes about the Stoichi pit. When everyone went home, Amatami went to pack Sasuke. Banri decided that it was time for a serious conversation and took his grandson to the tea room, imposing an additional barrier. Each head, when he chooses a receiver or gives up his powers, passes this flower, on which the success of the future head's board depends. Our training will soon come to an end. I have doubts about the future, so I decided that the time has come, the old man explained, putting a flower covered with kanji and a whirlpool symbol in the middle on the table. And what's in this scroll? Naruto cautiously took the value of the clan, looking at the old man. For me, emptiness, yet I was not worthy. Initially, either KESHINA or her children were supposed to get the right to become the head, but still I am glad that the traitor and the half-bloods did not have such an opportunity. You are the light that will revive our clan. I just need to open it. Uzumaki asked and, receiving a nod, slowly began to tell. To reveal the flower, going over each of kanji, but, surprisingly, he couldn't understand a single word. When he opened it completely, the hieroglyphs spread over the hands of the Jinchuriki, and rushed to the temples. His body was shackled, not allowing him to throw the flower, and his eyes were covered with a white veil. When Naruto was able to see again, he was already in the middle of the sea, levitating over the water. A whirlpool began to form around him, from which a gray-haired old man came out, forcing Uzumaki to kneel with his aura. What's going on, Kurama? Naruto asked in a panic, but there was silence in the answer. So, you Jinchuriki Kubi, claimed more than the old man asked, enjoying the surprised look of the young man. Yes, don't you think so, child? I can really hear your thoughts, see your past. I have a lot of names, I even forgot many of them, but you can call me a neighbor. Founder, that's right, child. I'm the one who started it all. I am the one who helped the worthy to elevate our clan. And now you have 2 options. Either let me merge with you so that I can share my knowledge, or refuse, and we will never see each other again. Which will you choose, young prince, great knowledge or blissful ignorance? A neighbor asked, extending his hand to a distant descendant. I am grateful to Banrison and Matamason. I want to fulfill their dream, to revive the clan. But I want to make a family out of it, where everyone will hold onto each other so as not to repeat the fate of their ancestors. Please help me, Uzumaki said with confidence in his eyes, and, without a doubt, shaking hands with a neighbor. Words worthy of a future chapter. The old man nodded and poked the boy's forehead with his fingers. Naruto fell into a dream. Starting to fall back, he was picked up by a water stream, forming a pillow. Get some sleep, and I need to sort something out. Looking at his descendant, Uzumaki said and disappeared from space, appearing in a cage to Yubi. And who else are you? The fox growled, furiously waving his tails, preparing to pounce on the aliens. So you're meeting old friends, Kurama. The world has really deteriorated, even if they managed to make a monster out of you. That's not what Rikuta wanted. The neighbor shook his head, ignoring the threat in the face of Biju. He calmly approached the seal, studying it. Deva, speechless to Yubi, sat down on the ground. Not believing that I met my friend. I remembered how many years had passed. I remember you as a little fox, but you've grown up like this. He smiled good-naturedly at the Uzumaki, approaching his friend and patting him on the paw. You only see half of my power. The fox fell silent, realizing that he had blurted out too much, and decided to change the subject. How did you end up here? Your Jinchuriki signed a contract with me. I will help him fulfill his goal to revive the clan. This is also in my interests. Who will be glad that the heirs have lost the power of attorney? They have greatness. The old man immediately decided to clarify so that Kyubi would have less suspicion, knowing his character perfectly well. You're friends with him, so I think you won't mind if I help the boy. My ways may be a little wrong, but know that I'm doing everything for his good. So let's keep some things a secret. Do you agree? The fox thought about it, but decided to agree. The neighbor nodded with satisfaction, tearing off the seal, and before the fox could roar, Uzumaki burned new hieroglyphs on the pillar. With his chakra, Tef has changed. Kartana growled at Yubi, narrowing his eyes. Just like you, retorted the old man, removing the drip from the post to make sure there are no errors. During my life, I have created many seals for all occasions, and these only take the worst of my developments. I think you understand that the world is getting worse. People have become more angry, greedy. The boy will not be able to achieve his goals by himself, and there is no hope for these two. KESHINA ruined everything, but no one wanted to admit it, considering it a worthy government. The old man waved his hand in displeasure and, leaning on the post, rubbed the bridge of his nose. But you can ruin the kid's life, Kurama objected and looked away, trying not to look into the piercing gaze of the sucker. We will not achieve victory without sacrifices. Imagine, when the guy gets stronger and gains strength in the clan, it will not be difficult for us to free your brothers and sisters. You are not demons, but protective gods. I can give you this status. The hatches will worship you and give you gifts, not run away or try to seal you. Paradise for Biju. Eat sweetly. The fox grunted, curling up into a ball and hiding his muzzle in his tails. If everything is within the framework of a lot of times, then I don't mind, but if I understand that you have overstepped the line, I will immediately tell Naruto everything. Whatever you say. He nodded at the Uzumaki and with a quick wave, left another Fuin painting on the new seal. Since you're not in the mood to talk anymore, I think I'll go. I still have unfinished business. Disappearing from the seal space in an instant. The Council of Elders must recognize. To know, the arrogance of the clan is not to occupy, Hamura shouted, taking his place at the square table. As a result, all of our plans went to Yuba, under the tail. Koharu nodded glumly, folding and placing the fan on the table. We warned you that your games will not lead to good. Danzo said with displeasure, tapping his finger on the cane. These two had been bothering him for a long time, but, unfortunately, they were still useful. However, the cards are not as bad as they could be. Hiruzen was stuffing tobacco into his pipe while he was away. The face touched with a slight smile. Naruto is not one of those who will obey. Already now, he has been able to attract to his side a new troika, and our future clan heads, who will be on his side in the future. What's the benefit for us, Hiruzen? Kaharu grumbled, glaring at her teammate. You call it wrong, not ours and villages. First of all, there should be a benefit for the village, and ours already after what happened. Or have you forgotten what Taburama-sensei ordered us to do? I decided to remind you about the Shimura framework. While the eye involuntarily moved under the bandages. Looking at everything that is happening, it seems to me that you have completely forgotten about the tasks assigned to you. The elder sitting on the window intervened in the conversation and took a puff after so many years, but immediately coughed. Damn it. Hiruzen, your clan has forgotten how to make cigarettes at all. What kind of shitty tobacco? Saputo-san. Four veterans shouted out, and, completely forgetting about their age, fell on one knee in front of Uzumaki. Look what, remember, and I thought that old age was finally the remnants of your brains. Destroyed it. We thought that you had finally perished with the destruction of Uzushio, said Kaharu, looking up at the second sensei. My physical shell has been gone for a long time, but my spirit is still waiting for a suitable shell. Did Naruto have Uzumaki? Danzo decided to assume. All right. So with my support, your plans will go with less creek, so you cannot worry about Naruto, but you will have to eliminate his guardians. Eliminate, but what about the seals they support? Kaharu was indignant, but at the same moment, Taiton's head and Mitakata fell to the floor. Due to the dissecting blow created by the futon technique, the wind sword. I think it won't be difficult for you to get rid of this garbage. No, Saputo-san, replied Danzo, who had long prepared compromising material and plans for reprisals against many people. It's great, I'll help you deal with Ashen's followers, Uzumaki assured them, looking at his hand, firm which steam was coming. After all, Naruto's body is not ready yet, even for a small part of my strength, but I think with the regeneration from kurama, I will be able to hold out. Who is watching my heir now? The old man asked, walking around the office and stopping his gaze at the Sarutobi tube, which the founder immediately picked up, studying the patterns on it. We recently got the privilege to do this. The observers were appointed Uchiha Shisui from Hiruzen and Uchiha Itachi from me. The head of the root took the initiative again, following the mentor with the help of Sharingans in his hand. These brats are not extinct yet. What a shame for my clan. Although these animals will be useful. 5 months later, you think it will work, I decided to put my student's neighbor in doubt, warming up a cigarette in my hand. In theory, Uzumaki muttered as he folded the cross-shaped seal, and a copy of the alavologist outside the barrier appeared out of a cloud of smoke. And exhaling, he slowly began to fold the seals, muttering to himself, tiger, pig, bull, dog, snake. And when the new haze disappeared, Naruto was able to see his double again, only now he was on the other side of the barrier. At large. Uzumaki looked at his ancestor with burning eyes, but he nodded modestly, hiding a smile. Still, the old man liked this kid, he felt potential in him. Well, now we are. We can also visit your laboratory, the neighbor said. And Naruto, in the affirmative nodding, ran to the side 43 of the polygon. However, the founder of the clan was not particularly interested in this place. The recollections of the heir Reed were enough in full. And here are the larvae of the Uchiha clan, who were ordered to keep an eye on Jinchuriki. He needed a laboratory and an ideal place for negotiations. Naruto, did you feel them? Yes, neighbor Susan. I've been followed for a long time, but people are different, Uzumaki mentally replied without slowing down. Uchiha. The fox growled, perfectly remembering this disgusting smell, only the chakra of the red eyes stank so much. And the Enbu did not see any super importance in their mission, and in front of them there was just a child. Even though the heir of the clan with a nine-tailed one sealed inside. Therefore, in their opinion, it was enough to keep a short distance and not shine. Raven, don't you think he is strange? Swallow suddenly asked, carefully studying the target with a Sharingan. Are you talking about his approach to overcoming the barrier? No, his aura is like. It's not a child. The QB chakra, Raven assumed, preparing to send a signal to Dan for Sanu. Perhaps, but it reminds me more of the spirit of Katadan. While we continue to observe, Swallow decided, slowing down to increase the distance to the target. After all, he really did not like the possible turn of events. Having escorted his guards to the training ground, Naruto stopped abruptly and, turning towards the Anbu, pointed at them with his finger. "You don't have to hide, I noticed you from the very beginning." Provocation, Raven immediately said, "Not even." Not thinking to show Jinchuriki, but his partner thought otherwise. "Tired of playing hide and seek?" The swallow said coldly, plucking out of the crown of leaves into the clearing, and, pulling the tana out of its scabbard, went to the side of the Uzumaki. "Tired, but not to me." Naruto smiled mysteriously. And a neighbor came out from behind the nearest tree, looking at Anbo with interest. A rash move for one of the best teachers of the younger generation. "I will assume that you are Shizu, you are more emotional than your friend. Accordingly, you tend to make mistakes." The old man reasoned, but before he could utter the last words, kunai flew at him. Itachi calculated the possible reaction of his opponent to such an obvious attack, so halfway through the kunai ricocheted off each other, thereby covering a much larger area and simultaneously disorienting the enemy. However, the target did not budge, just caught all the dangerous iron. But even the Anbu were ready for such an outcome, since the kunai had to be used as a distraction. Then the swallow would take advantage of it, lightning fast shortening the distance, stationed to the target and delivering a fatal blow with a tant. This was supposed to happen, only the neighbor grabbed the Uchiha by the hand and, pressing on the nerve, forced the shinobi to unclench his palm with a weapon. As soon as Uzumaki looked into the cracks of the mask, he saw the three Tomoyas spinning quickly. What made the old man grin? "Do you think this will work on me, Shisui? I have seen Sharingans and scarier in my life, but I must praise the abilities of your eyes are interesting. You must be Kageme's offspring, right? Who the hell are you?" No matter how hard he tried, Shisui's voice trembled, and a chill ran through his body. "Now you are ready to conduct a dialogue," the old man chuckled and released the brunette. "You can call me Himitsu. I think this hint is enough for you to keep information about me confidential." The neighbor turned his gaze from the swallow to the raven, who, though cautiously, approached them. "And what do you want from us? Or is it also a secret? And they say that Uchiha do not know how to joke." Naruto held back a laugh, trying to imitate his mentor, but hold the camera. "He can't do a stone face yet. I heard you had some problems, and that's why I want to do you a favor." "Are you sure you didn't make the wrong people?" Raven perfectly hid his emotions, remaining calm in any situation, but now he feels like a child who was caught in a lie. The old man knows everything and understands perfectly well what to expect from Uchiha. Even if you do not focus on the look and the smile, and cry about the futility of lying, you feel like Himitsu chakra surrounds him. Reconnaissance, trying to find signs of lies and itachi. Your family has driven itself into a corner, and now the fiercest defenders of your clan are snapping. In pathetic attempts to scare away from themselves not so imaginary enemies that they have set up for themselves. You've always loved to yap loudly, and when it presses, then bite. Actually, this is what you are doing now, having decided to start a coup. The Uchiha looked at each other. It was no secret that everything was not so calm in their clan, but only a few people know about the coup. And the old man clearly also keeps silent about many details known to him, a little bit of cover. Feeding them information. "And what will be the benefit to you from us? What do you want?" Itachi took the initiative of negotiations, crossing his arms over his chest and frowning, hoping to somehow provoke his father. Since the mask of a cold-blooded genius fell off so quickly. "It's not particularly profitable for my clan to have an internal conflict right now. The time is too restless now, and my student is not ready for this. And the secret agreement with Uzumaki will clearly appeal to your head." The gray-haired man sat down under a tree, in the Agora pose, and closed his eyes. His eyes filled his lungs with smog, exhaling it through his nostrils. Although the current tobacco was disgusting, but you can get used to it, especially after so many years of imprisonment. Your problem is very easy to solve in order to clear your reputation in front of people, clans and hokages. The daimyo needs an enemy who can be blamed in all situations. The student of the second one, who twisted the words of the mentor, turning the world into black and white, is perfect for this role. But Danza is very useful for the village, deciding to object to Shisui, but under the gaze of the old man. How many useful things can a clan and one old man, who can no longer think straight, do? Danzo will dive into his paranoia every year. First there were the Senju, then the Kurama clan, Haddock, and now it's the Uchiha's turn. And do you think he will help the village? For the village, these sacrifices are insignificant. On the example of our clan, it became clear that there was no other way out, Itachi replied decisively, striking Shisui with an answer that he could not even find words. It's always easier to kill a hungry wolf, but won't there be more ways out? If he is fed and tamed, the old man decided to philosophize, rubbing his beard and gazing at the moon. Unlike these cowards, I know how to tame not only your clan, but also many others, if they come up with the same idea. Anticipating your question, it is enough to remove only the radicals and give the conditions a little better than it was before. And what does it require of us? Swallow has already decided everything for himself. Taking off his mask, he approached the neighbor, kneeling in front of him on one knee. So that's what you decided, the raven whispered. By making a friend's decision and repeating his own action. Wisely, well, I need the names of the radicalists and your cooperation in the future. Hi. The Enbu exclaimed, raising their heads. It remains only to conclude an oath. This seal will oblige us to comply with the terms of the deal and will kill us against it. Otherwise. Also, she will not allow you to blab, Uzumaki explained with a few strokes, burning the seals on the Uchiha's necks, which immediately dissolved under the skin. The old man pulled back the collar of his kimono and showed his new allies a similar seal. After that, he let them go and it cost the two brunettes to disappear from the alavologist's sensory zone. Naruto laughed. They seriously believed it all, sensei, you even accumulated too much atmosphere. But in some ways that bird was right, Danza is really more useful than Hiruzen. You laugh at fools, even though you haven't gone far from them yourself, the old man chuckled. Getting up and walking out into the center of the clearing, crossing his arms behind his back. It will be hard to adjust to Danza, he is too ambitious and fixated. With such a profitable cooperation for a long time will not be. Time does not stretch, constantly expect, pressing the back. Hiruzen is still more smooth, and the only one suits me as the head of the root. That's okay. And what about the Uchiha? Isn't it profitable for us to have them cut out? Switched to another interesting topic Naruto. Watching sparks run down his fingers. For half a year, his level of control of the lightning element has increased significantly. But it is still not enough to use full-fledged techniques. It is profitable, even if they harm the village, this option will suit us, but not now. You are weak, and there are no people who can support you in your endeavors. Therefore, while we support these rabid dogs on a leash, and when you are ready, then only then you can let go. Well, you know better, neighbor Susan, bowed to the tin-haired, and hiding a smile. Arakimaru's lab, did you bring it? The snake croaked, looking up from the reports for the week. Aha, as requested, the scarlet-haired man nodded, shaking a test tube of a thick, salty liquid in front of Sanin. Great, like getting the machine ready for blood and DNA analysis. Hi, Arakimaru-san. The gray-haired man bowed meekly, approaching Uzumaki and taking the sample. The newcomer casually asked the boy, although he had not seen him until that moment. But he was behaving too calmly for a laboratory assistant. Yes, they were transferred from the intelligence department under my wing, explained the snake, watching the action of a new subordinate, who so far was not particularly efficient. All this time, Naruto was nervous if the results showed that the antibodies were too strong, and the chakra system was very specific. Then the chances for an eye transplant will be close to zero. Arakimaru, as soon as he got acquainted with the results, immediately froze, and an unhealthy smile spread on his face. Suitable for a madman. And your sister is not so simple, the snake said mysteriously, causing the alavologist to frown. What do you mean by that? Perhaps this will be a discovery for you, and I would advise you not to spread about it, but Sasuke-chan, Uchiha, moreover, is purely cow. So if I can get a couple of Sharingans, then you can transplant them to her. In theory, yes. But first I will need to do some research to understand the cause of her blindness, and for this she must take part in it. Can you persuade me? Yes, I'll come up with an excuse. The main thing is that Sasuke does not find out the true reason for the alavologist of all this. Peekaboo, you want to surprise her, but I have to warn you right away. This is all I do for the money. And what do you need? Since you're going to get a couple of Sharingans, then I would like to get a few copies for my use. And also for Sasuke to participate in some experiments when she learns new eyes. If everything is within reason and Sasuke benefits from it, then I agree. It can't be any other way, Naruto-kun. You are a valuable asset in the future, so you don't have to worry. And what about the modification of your body? The snake reminded, waving his hand, choosing his words. I'm ready right now, so it all depends on you, Arakamaruzan. If so, then the rest of the cases can wait. This experiment promises to be interesting, like preparing an operating room. The room was glued together with seals, the background of the chakras, although for a short period, but they should be enough for a while. To transplant Kurama into a new body. In case something goes wrong, there will be a neighbor who will have to reveal himself during an emergency. Are you sure? Kyuubi asked. I hope that the Jinchuriki will come to their senses after all, the risks are too high. It's too late to change my mind, and I don't want to. And in any case, you will stay in the black, either get a new body, or will be free. Naruto explained, lying down on a cold, metal table, involuntarily shuddering. It'll be your own fault. The main thing is, don't forget to set aside part of your chakra, otherwise I'm definitely fucked. At the same time, a fox was printed out of the scroll, however unusual, but from the world of the call, which, unfortunately, could not stand it all the time. Constant infusion of chakra to Yubi, and fell into a vegetative state. Perhaps it's for the best. Such a vessel, although with the help of many seals and constructs, but in theory it should withstand the entire Biju chakra. Ready? Reikimaru asked and received a nod. In response, he touched the seal, slowly turning it in his inner world. Uzumaki performed a similar action. Immediately, the flow of the scarlet chakra wandered around the room with chaotic tongues until they found a new vessel. And like leeches clung to it quickly, sinking into the body. As soon as the transfer was completed, Sannin pasted a seal on the scaffolding, which helped the beast's body cope and adapt to the chakra much faster. The predator quickly began to increase in size, becoming slightly larger than the adult dogs of the clan and the Nezuka. And the coat became a more saturated acid-orange color. Instead of one tail, there were 9, completing the transformation. The seal remained open all this time, allowing to maintain the level of the fox chakra in Naruto with the help of this energy, which now resembled an umbilical cord connecting the old vessel with the new one. Arakamaru tried to do everything as fast as possible. Taking the fox's blood, he went to the microscope, studying the changes in the cells. After the merge, and fortunately the result was deleted. Based on a pre-derived recipe for mixing DNA, he created a serum, which he immediately injected with Alivolos. The minutes dragged on for a long time, but soon Uzumaki's veins swelled, and then he fell into an epileptic fit. And then his heart stopped. The neighbor was about to intervene, but the cardiograph showed that the heart started working again, while the body of the alivologist was changing. The hair has become longer, as well as nails with teeth, now resembling claws with fangs. The eyes abruptly opened, showing an elongated scarlet. The pupil, and Naruto himself jumped up abruptly, greedily gulping the air. It was dangerous to drive the medicine with a needle or tabletax now, so an anesthetic mask was used, giving him a mixture of nitric oxide and oxygen to inhale. When the lives of the patients were no longer in danger, and they more or less recovered, the snake decided to leave them alone, to give them time to adapt to new sensations. And how do you feel? Kurama croaked, not getting used to the new ligaments, or rather, now physical. They are from the chakra. All the senses have become a level higher, approximately at the level of when I used your chakra. And also I can lengthen my nails and make them sharper, roughly speaking, turning them into claws, explained the scarlet-haired man, demonstrating the process of clarity. But then he returned the original shape with his nails. Also, the eyes with teeth took on their original appearance. The only penalties on the cheeks have become more pronounced, and there's nothing you can do about it. The stigma will never disappear, dabaya, and scorched by a poisonous chakra. In any case, it's too early to use this mode. It is necessary to learn as soon as possible to suppress the new source of the chakra, because it is too uncomfortable to sit on the restraining seals. I made a mental note at the uzumaki and touched my mentor, hoping to soften him to a more perfect seal. No, I immediately cut off all opportunities to persuade a neighbor. It's too early for you to study this seal, it will do more harm than good. And I'm not going to interfere unless absolutely necessary, you can handle the same problem yourself. And there was initially too much risk against it. And how do you feel, kurama? The guy sighed with displeasure, shifting his gaze to the tailed one, who cut circles with a side gate. The weight of the body, yes, in principle, the feeling that I have a physical body, is confusing. Being in the form of a chakra, it was much more comfortable. Have you forgotten anything, Naruto? Still, the old man decided to ask, but seeing the puzzled look of the student, he continued, now it's not so noticeable. But you already have two sources of chakra. One is yours, and the second one, which produces the kurama chakra, is located at the place of the seal. At first, you can push it to the seal, but even then, after the first check on its reliability, you will be killed. And what will you do when the second layer of chakra canals is finally cut through? If I use Kurama's chakra, then my chakra will flash against her background, and in fact no one will see two, but only one. After all, new chakra canals can be squeezed hard until they are needed, the heir replied, looking at the floor. But now you won't burn your chakra system, the new one will just adapt. To her venom, the fox found a positive moment in a slightly shitty situation. Yes, how much time do I have to adapt? For a second, smiling at a friend, Uzumaki became serious because he was facing a serious test from fate. A week can't be dragged out any longer, he said, as if the old man had pressed him, not paying attention to the mood of the air. The day before the Daisada event, Naruto stood in front of the entrance to the tunnel going underground. He had long told where to go, in case of an emergency, and what password to tell the guards. Now, trying to restrain a slight panic, he listened to the rattle of the cane, which became louder and clearer with each long second. Something happened, Naruto-kun, Danza croaked. His eye flashed over possible places for ambush or eavesdropping. Remember, you said that if something strange happens, then contact you. Naruto averted his frightened gaze to the side, and, hugging himself, waited for a response. That's right, Shimura tensed slightly, and his fingers caught on the handle of the cane. Recently, when I went out for a walk in the evening, two brunettes from the Uchiha clan spoke to me, and asked me to come at night to an abandoned temple on a slope in the forest. The scarlet-haired man was almost whispering. My eyes were already wet. The head of the root was more interested in the involvement of the itachi. He had been informed about the unrest among the clan, but did not think that the restoration would happen so early. He wasn't worried that Uzumaki might be lying. Friendships were built, but about his night walks. It has been reported for a long time, and it is not surprising that Raven kept silent about the meeting. So he chose the clan over the village. It's good that Hiruzen asked to allocate him a raven for a short-term mission together with a swallow. Otherwise the Uchiha's plans would have changed immediately. I'll deal with it, but please don't go out for a walk today, it might be noisy. The old man tried to smile as friendly as possible and patted Uzumaki on the head. Okay, goodbye, Danzo-san. Quickly bowed to Naruto and ran in the direction of the quarter, while Elder accompanied him. With his gaze, Shimura was waiting for the traders of the village at the place indicated by the boy, while some of his soldiers, disguised, sat in ambush, waiting for the order. To his surprise, Hiruzen came out of the forest to meet him, accompanied by Itachi and Shisui. What do you mean, Hiruzen? Shimura squinted, reaching for the bandages. Shimura Danzo, I, Hiruzen Sarutobi, on behalf of the village, find you guilty of crimes against Konoha, and, in particular, against the founding clans. For that you recognized the traitor, and your punishment will be death penalty. I will be your executioner. With hard-to-hide sadness, the last Kage said, but, taking off his cloak, under which there was armor, he looked at his opponent with determination. So it's time to solve all our problems once and for all. Smiling, Dan photographed from the hands of bandages, demonstrating hand-covered Sarangani and face Hashirama on the shoulder. The Uchiha immediately attacked while Hiruzen bit his finger. Futon, vacuum waves. Shimura took a breath in his mouth, and then released a wave of Konokov winds. As soon as the blade got to Itachi, he disintegrated into 100 crows, and Shisui instantly appeared in the sky. With the help of Shunshin, Sarutobi blocked the attack with a stone wall, which the wave cut in half. The head of the root turned back and blocked the attack from an unknown Anbu, but then an indistinguishable Tuachi stuck Tana in his back. Shimura smiled at this, and wooden spikes instantly burst out of his body, piercing only the unlucky subordinate Hiruzu. One eye closed, which means Izanagi turned Danza's death into an illusion, giving him an appreciation of the depressing situation. All his subordinates were forced to fight with the Enbu of the third. Hiruzen did not miss the opportunity, and aimed his staff at his old friend. Only he was able to evade, and, having soaked the wind chakra with Kuna, he launched a counterattack, slightly grazing the former Kage's chest, leaving a bleeding cut. He helped to avoid another attack from Shimura Shisui, who, having imbued the Shinbans with Raiten, sent them to the traitor. Danza could only jump away and find himself in the path of the fireball, previously released by Itachi. Thus, I had to sacrifice the second Sharingan. The head of the root decided to compensate for the preponderance of forces with the help of Baku's appeal, which immediately began to suck in air, and that's it. All submitting to the action of the shinobi technique, greatly reducing the number of fighters on both sides. Fire techniques flew into the creature's mouth, forcing it to interrupt the absorption, and then Sarutobi sent the chimera away from the battlefield with Inma's staff. After eating the chakro, a restoring pill, Hiruzen again used the summoning technique. A detachment of monkeys responded to his request and were given the order to detain Baku. Meanwhile, the two annoying Uchiha did not give Shimori and seconds to take a breath. The shinobi worked as a single goal. As a whole, while one attacked close, the second covered with long-range weapons. And in order not to allow Danza to impose his battle style, they constantly changed roles, putting the head of the root in a difficult position. When it seemed that Danza was finally exhausted, both the Ensa, they rushed to the attack to deprive the traitor of another eye. It's a trap, Hiruzen shouted, but it was too late. Shimura allowed the shinobi to pierce himself with a weapon and grabbed the Uchiha by the wrists. The seal of his own curse, Danzu said smugly. And the seals that bound their movement spread over the bodies of the opponents. Until they are released from Fuinjutsu, he took off his shirt and on his chest there were 4 symbols which started leaking a black substance. Futon Raskyashi Rush. He announced the technique of the third, and the wind blade, cut off Danzo's hands, and immediately shouted, Daten, and hell. Before the reverse tetrahedral seal absorbed the Uchiha, the body of the Shimura plunged into a mud funnel, going deep into the earth's crust. And then the ground under the brunettes cracked, and like thin ice cracked and collapsed, demonstrating the emptiness created by the Danza technique into which the Anbu, who had not yet been freed from the influence of the seal of their own curse, fell. The head of the root took advantage of a second breakthrough to help his subordinates, releasing vacuum bullets from an old friend. Sarutobi's flare did not let him down, allowing him to dodge most of the bullets. But still one hit in the shoulder. But Hiruzen did not remain in debt and released a fireball in response, forcing Mura sacrifice another Sharingan. Because of the wound, the last hackage began to yield in battle to Danzo, who struck at the enemy. Reveled in his long-awaited superiority, but it did not last long, because Shisui pierced Danzo's back with Tana. But how? The old man croaked, not understanding how this Uchiha was able to get rid of the actions of his fuinjutsu. And only a glance at the burning mangekas in his eyes gave an answer to this already meaningless question. Samura has already lost 5 eyes, and it's too serious for a loss. And the further fight is unlikely to be in his favor, so he decided to remove the bandage from his main trump card. But the 4 kunai thrown by Itachi definitely hit the Sharingans. Damn the boy. Danzo shouted, finally losing his composure, and pulling off the blindfold from his right eye, he demonstrated it to 3 practitioners. The opponent is Mangeki Sharingan, in the form of 4 ultimate stars. Shisui whispered this pattern in a disbelieving, trembling voice, unable to finish. Kagami's eye, so you were responsible for his death after all, Danzo, and you should be grateful to me. Hiruzen, if it wasn't for me, he would have taken the title of Kage. You're just lucky that you turned out to be a more profitable figure for me. Did you know about this? Shisui exclaimed angrily. I assumed Sarutobi started talking, but Uchiha interrupted him. And you didn't even take any action. Calm down, Shisui. This is not the most important thing right now, first you need to. I tried to reason with Itachi's friend, but they didn't listen to him either, so that Kagami's grandson swore at you. And threw him into an attack on Danzo with his eyes closed. Don't you dare look at that eye, they instantly replace memories that you won't even understand. Nevertheless, I decided to warn Shisui, but his allies were now more concerned about the recklessness of Uchiha, who was emotional, but always knew when to turn on his head instead of feelings. The brunette understood that neither with the help of Kata Matsukami nor Samana Takachi, which could counteract any genjutsu, and only his grandfather's Tekamagaharu could resist both techniques. Therefore, he had the last Kazur left, which would allow him to put an end to the battle. After waiting for the impudent youngster to get close enough, Shimura struck a vertical blow from top to bottom. The blade of air damaged the Uchiha's right eye, but then the weapon collided with the green chakra, which quickly took the form of a skeleton. And a bony hand immediately grabbed the head of the root. If I had my way, your death would have been much more painful, but they won't let me. Innocently smiled Shisui, before crushing Danza in hand Susanoo. I hope you don't think that my grandfather's eye is too serious a price to pay for the settlement of our conflict. Kagami's grandson asked without hesitation, pulling out the Sharingan from Shimura's eye socket. He didn't care about the third one's answer, he would have taken what belonged to him. But now he would have to reprobe the ground in their affairs with Sarutobi. This is your inheritance by right, but I also want to rely on your prudence, so that there is no misunderstanding. Hiruzen hoped to play this play in a slightly different scenario, for the most part not wanting to lose credibility. But everything is going according to Saputation's plan. So, it only remains that a role to play, and adapt to the circumstances. Meanwhile, in the Uchiha quarter, Uzumaki, standing on a hillock, firm which the whole block was in full view, checked his equipment for the last time. For the guy, the neighbor made a concession and helped create a seal construct that allows you to stay invisible to all sensors. He could have gotten rid of those big-eyed brats himself, but his heir needs to be shown death, and the sooner the better. If everything goes according to the worst-case scenario, then we still have to intervene. If Naruto dies, then everything will be over for him. Are you ready? The old man asked, not taking his eyes off the moon, which was gradually covered by gray clouds. Weapons, seals and smoke shanks are in place, ammunition is in order. I remember the goals. The student replied dryly, closing his eyes, he was digging into his memories to make sure he was ready. Taking a deep breath and exhaling, Naruto nodded, although the mentor noticed the uncertainty in this gesture. There is no way back, forward. As soon as the old man gave the order, Uzumaki jumped down and immediately froze near the fence. Taking out a sheet of paper from the chakra, he slowly guided her along the fence, and, as he expected, she reacted to the presence of the barrier by reaching out to him. Such a primitive barrier. It's a pity to waste even a blank on it, but there is no time for improvisation. The heir spoke to himself complacently in his thoughts, taking out the seal of the scanzi. The key. Naruto wrote his chakras and, throwing up the air, folded several seals. The sheet immediately stuck to the barrier, making it visible at a distance of 2 by 2 meters at first, and then completely removing it. Having entered the territory, he immediately went to the house of the first victim. He decided to start with less important goals and finally leave a big fish in the form of one of the elders. Are they really that confident? The scarlet-haired man was surprised when, jumping over the fence, he saw a closed door. Maybe there is a catch here, but there was no time to check. The patrolmen's voices were already heard, so I had to risk diving into the house. With a sigh of relief, he glanced around the corridor, catching his eye on the photos of a man with his daughter. The guy's heart pricked, but having brushed aside unnecessary thoughts, he carefully went to the second floor. There were 3 doors upstairs, but only one had a distinct smell of chakra. For this ability, the fox genes began to thank, as well as for vision. The elongated pupils immediately caught on the target. Slowly pulling out the kunai, he approached the victim. One blow to the carotid artery will be enough. Raising the knife, Naruto froze, as if someone had grabbed his arm. I can't, I don't want to leave the kid an orphan. You have to do it, the neighbor said sternly, watching what was happening from the side. Come on, for the sake of your family. Damn it. The heir swore, his heart was beating at an insane pace, but he still made a decision. Kunai rushed into the neck of the sneeze, only now the brunette woke up and reacted to the attack. Seriously, for my murder, they send a snot that can't even hold the heartbeat. Naruto's Sharingan immediately spun in Chi's eyes, immediately closed his eyes, and slightly bowed his head. Immediately receiving a blow to the jaw, followed by his chest. Alavalisi did not have time to recover, as he was pushed, and then he was prescribed from the foot to the body, which caused the guy to fly to the window. I could forgive you, but you're clearly a donzo mutt, which means you've become a weak-willed doll for a long time, so don't be offended. But you'll have to be killed. The brunette was in no hurry. It was clear that he believes that he has everything under control, and the opponent is not worth half the effort spent on him. Uzumaki, on the other hand, was glad of the timeout due to unexpected verbal diarrhea. The gaze was directed at the legs. If we recall Guy's lessons, then such a piece is visually. Visual information should help him. Desk-based combat. No matter how hard you try to hide the movement, your legs will betray your intentions. And as soon as the opponent jerked for a jerk, Naruto hit the kneecap with a well-aimed kick, turning it inside out. Uchiha, not expecting such an attack, began to fall down, and even though Uzumaki beat roughly, he managed to get his knee into the opponent's jaw. The opponent's head tilted up, and the alavologist's hand jerked refractorily to the Adam's apple, and the glove tore because of the sharply grown claws, which pierced the throat. The squelching death rattle of the victim cut into Naruto's ears with disgust. He couldn't help himself, and dinner immediately crawled out of his stomach. Fortunately, he managed to take off his mask. He was turning inside out, and, as luck would have it, the victim did not stop wheezing. Why? Why do I feel so bad about killing? I always imagined myself dissecting my abusers with pleasure, and then, from the usual murder, I felt sick. Mentally, the heir turned to his mentor, hoping to get advice. To represent and do completely different concepts. Did you think that taking a life is easy, literally with one swipe? In fact, it is, but you cut the flesh, the smell and the taste of blood, see the sight a target that does not want to die. You kill not just a person, but you break the thread of life, which is tied up in a tangle with other destinies. There will always be someone who will mourn the dead and curse you, the old man explained, standing near the doorway. Looking at his disciple, he felt disappointed. No, it was already clear that the first murder does not work. Easy, but it didn't go according to plan. The neighbor missed an important moment of his upbringing, and the Banri could not create a core in the boy. So at the moment, it can be called a shameful failure in the training of the heir. And by the way, if there are those who will grieve, then there is someone to take revenge on. Therefore, you need to cover your tracks so that no one thinks of you. The founder closed his eyes, hearing the floor creak behind the door, so that child, at least, heard something. And that means they can hurt my family. The scarlet-haired man thought of the chain, taking from the hands of the murdered KESHINA, for a second. His gaze stopped with already empty eyes at the sneeze, in which fear of imminent death was read, and hatred for the inept killer who disgraced him before his ancestors. Now pity has begun to recede for me. Disgust, which was expressed by a kick on the head. After all, the neighbor had to intervene in what was happening, albeit only with the help of a bookmark in the student's head. Let his thoughts go in the right direction. Naruto, concentrating on hearing, was able to catch the retreating footsteps. The creaking of the floorboards suggested that the girl was heading for the stairs, hoping to escape. Because of the muted emotions in Uzumaki, he no longer saw the point of behaving quietly, and in a jump, kicking out the door with his foot, he immediately threw a kunai into the child's shin. The screaming girl fell to the floor, but before she could start begging for help, Naruto managed to run up and close the mouth of the little Uchiha with his hand. The scarlet-haired man poked the girl's forehead with a bloody claw, and slowly, slightly pressing, drew a bloody line up to her nose. Without taking her eyes off, she stared into the elongated pupil of her father's killer. The girl couldn't hold back her tears. The body began to shake, and the first tomoyas appeared in his eyes. Congratulations on the awakening of the Sharingan. It's just a pity that these eyes won't help you survive, but you know, they will make life easier for my sister. You had just such beautiful onyx eyes, and Sharingan has a rich scarlet color. Uzumaki pierced the child's neck with his claws, wincing with disgust at himself, and bitter tears fell from his eyes. Sorry, you don't have time for snot. Tear out the eyes of both of them, and seal them in a flower. Just don't forget to disfigure the skin around your eyes, as if you just cut them and didn't take them away, the old man ordered. Watching the clock. Danzo's people should be arriving soon, and they're all messing around with the same goal. And there is no hope that the root will be able to eliminate all the targets. Hi, wiping his tears, Naruto croaked with his sleeve. By force, following the order, he installed a seal that in 10 minutes would have to catch fire and burn the Uchiha's body along with their house. Head straight to the elder, feeling that everything will not go according to plan. The old man's premonitions were also shared by the patrolman, who suddenly revived. So Uzumaki had to be trebly careful not to get in his eyes. What's going on? The heir wondered mentally, noticing somehow in the house. Or the masked shinobi make their way out of them. The root, apparently, decided to get rid of the itachi under the guise. We'd better be relieved of suspicion, since there is a scapegoat. But innocent people will suffer. We were supposed to kill only radicalists. This is what we wanted, but they have another task. Yes, and you also eliminate the innocent, so just forget about it and concentrate on the task at hand. There was an explosion behind him. Looking back, Uzumaki froze, not believing what had happened. This is the same house, but the seal had to react later. The explosion shouldn't have happened. Naruto scrolled through all the moments in his head where he could mess up with the seal like that. The time before the work is probably, but to explode it wait, said Susetsu, already doubting the usefulness of the participation of the student in this mission. Most likely, he will have to intervene. A patrolman attacked the heir, jumping off the roof, swinging a tana. The little-haired kunai deflected the attack aside, realizing that he could not block the blow, and immediately jumped back, leaving smoke bombs as a gift to the enemy. Uchiha did not run away, seeing that he did not leave any explosive surprises, and, standing up to his full height, activated the Sharingan, looking for an intruder. I advise you to give up, you don't care. Bitch. The patrolman howled, grabs. For the eyes that itched and watered madly. Tear, I explained Naruto, and threw a kunai with an explosive seal into a cloud of smoke, which immediately exploded as it stuck into the ground. Close the doors and prepare for defense. We can't let them get there. Up to the elder, the head of the old man's guard ordered, and did not have time to finish. He had to jump away from the explosive seal kunai, or rather, he thought so. Sinbins soaked in poison flew out of the seal in different directions, hitting both the head of the guard and those who closed the heavy doors. Standing in front of the gate, the scarlet-haired man was not going to go inside, but printed out a fishing line from a scroll, dotted with explosive tags, and, jumping onto the roof, scattered the net all over its surface. And, having run away at a sufficient distance, he activated the explosion chain, which brought down beams on those hiding in the building. An elder surrounded by a personal squad jumped out of the clouds of dust and smoke. Naruto threw smoke bombs with special kunai at the enemy, but the old man threw it all into the sender with an air wave. You think if these childish tricks worked on the young Uchiha, then I'll get caught, the old man grinned, shaking the dust off his kimono. Damn, we need to lure him out or else. Uzumaki ran to the side, immediately finding himself under a hail of throwing weapons. There was no way to evade everything, so all that remained was to cover up with your hands. Despite the pain, he reached the fishing line and abruptly pulled it towards him, soaking it with Riton. Only an excellent plan was destroyed by one of the old man's subordinates, hitting the mask with his foot and splitting it into two parts. Uchiha will press his knee on the scarlet-haired man's stomach and put a kunai to his throat, waiting for an order. The neighbor was about to intervene, but suddenly the body of all the Uchiha fell to the ground, and pools of blood began to spread out under them. Having taken off the corpse, Naruto covered the wiped part of his face with his hand, trying to assess the situation. Damn Uchiha, muttered the Enbu in a hyena mask, fastidiously wiping the torn piece of the old man's kimono with his own blood. While the rest of the shinobi in faceless masks studied the corpses or monitored the situation around. Hyena, with an appraising look, walked over the Uzumaki heir and grinned. A scarlet light flashed in the right eye socket of the mask. Let's move on, Hyena ordered, disappearing as suddenly as he appeared with his squad. It's time for us to leave here too, said the neighbor, thoughtfully looking at the place where Anbu had just stood. Perhaps there are interesting shinobi in this village. A few hours after the attack on the Uchiha clan. Standing at the edge of the forest, the neighbor looked with interest at Konoha, who was perfectly visible from here. Even despite the illusionary barriers, they only slightly blurred the picture for the old man. No matter how hard Konoha tries, but they definitely won't be able to hide the clouds of smoke spreading throughout the village, the forest, from the territory of the Uchiha clan. Soon everyone will know about this incident. Danzo said hoarsely, approaching Saputasen. Every step was hard for him, but Shimura did not like to show weakness. So, no matter what, he kept an indifferent face. I honestly do not think that you will succeed. You don't regret it, Uzumaki confessed, twirling a cigarette in his hands. Naruto can't hold the power of a neighbor for a long time, especially considering what a hard day it was for the kid. But if you play, then to the end, especially before the Shimura. In Kano, I no longer had the opportunity to fully benefit. They think my methods are too inhumane, so I will have to provide support as an Otagakura. What about Tekamagaharu? In the foreseeable future, everything. I couldn't use it anyway. I had to spend the accumulated energy to create the genjutsu of my death, so I let Shisui take it. Instead taking his Katomatsuki almost equivalent exchange, Shimura explained, touching the bandaged eye. He had no doubt that this Manjikyu would be as useful as his grandfather's eye, and thanks to Saputasen's plan, he was also able to restore his collection of Sharingans during the attack on the Uchiha. Then I won't keep you, Danzo. In the land of rice, you have a lot of worries. As you command, Saputasen, Shimura bowed slightly, ordering his subordinates to move out. Meanwhile, the neighbor looked up at the sky, the clouds parted, allowing him to see the moon again. Both goddesses turned a blind eye to the atrocities that were committed with their children. That Amaterasu, that Tsukiyomi were blind today, and did not come to the screams of the Uchiha, throwing them to the mercy of fate. Thank you so much for watching this video to the end. Well, according to tradition, write the time code so I know how many elite shinobi, or elite kunoichi, I watched this video to the end. Also, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like it. Well, write your opinion about this work in the comments. I read all the comments. Thank you. I wish everyone good luck and bye to everyone. And most importantly, don't get sick. Be healthy.